The following is a paid advertisement. Really? A paid advertisement? Wait, the B-Movie Cast got paid? Yes, the following is a paid advertisement. This episode of the B-Movie Cast is brought to you by the estate planning services of Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law. Remember, when the zombie apocalypse comes, things will move pretty fast.
The body should be disposed of at once, preferably by cremation.
Well, how long after death, then, does the body become reactivated?
It's only a matter of minutes.
Minutes? Well, that doesn't give people time to make any arrangements.
Oh, you're right. It doesn't give them time to make funeral arrangements. The bodies must be carried to the street and burned. They must be burned immediately. Soak them with gasoline and burn them. The bereaved will have to forego the dubious comforts that a funeral service will give. They're just dead flesh and dangerous.
So don't leave your estate planning needs until the last minute, because you don't know when that last minute could come. Call Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, at 859-351-2294. That's 859-351-2294. Remember, when you go, you don't want people saying,
"Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up."
Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, is licensed for practice in the state of Kentucky. Consult your local attorney for matters outside of the state of Kentucky.
Command Mark, the time will be running at X-20 seconds. Mark, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
Spawned by the continuing decline and fall of society as we know it, and created on the second-floor spare-bedroom studio in the Piedmont of South Carolina. Podcasting on a shoestring budget and changing the world one freak at a time. It's the B-Movie Cast with your host, Vince Rotolo.
From coast to coast and worldwide via the internet, this is the B-Movie Cast, the podcast of unusual film and television.
This is episode 495 of the B-Movie Cast. This is number 6 in our countdown to B-Movie Cast episode 500. Before I go any farther, I want to get our contact information out of the way. We love hearing from all of you, so we have a feedback segment devoted to your comments and suggestions, and this is how you can contact us. Option 1, pick up your phone and dial 888-936-0808. This is a toll-free number and a very easy way to leave a voice message. Option 2, you can make your own MP3 file and send it in to bmoviecast@gmail.com. Or Use your smartphone, voice software, and record a call. Then just send that in as an attachment instead. Or option 3, if you're not into talking, you can just shoot us an email to bmoviecast@gmail.com. Our website is bmoviecast.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast. It's free, and there you can join us on the Facebook bmoviecast fan page and letterbox. Also, you can play the contest by sending in your answer by email to bmoviecast@gmail.com with contest in the subject line. And check out the links while you're there, or buy a t-shirt. I currently have smalls to 4X's. If you want to help us financially, there's a donation box you can click on as a supporter on the Lugosi, Karloff, Agar, and the infamous Xanadu level through PayPal. Also, the easiest way to donate is to click on the Amazon bar on the right side of our homepage. This Amazon link will take you to Amazon.com to make your purchase. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can still log into your personal accounts when you get there. It's completely private, so think about us before you buy online. So now, through the miracle of modern technology and thousands of miles of wire, server farms, PCs, Macs, the internet, and duct tape, we have our co-host from Lexington, Kentucky, author, editor, screenwriter, film producer, Nick Brown. He has a new website. It is authornickbrown.com. That's authornicbrown.com. He is the author of the Werewolf for Hire book series, starting with Blood Curse. He's also selling a book in collaboration with his wife Fiona, the B-Movie Cookbook. All of these are available on Amazon. He's produced 2 movies, Wretch and Loss Prevention. Both can be ordered on Blu-rays or DVDs through Amazon. He is also the producer of a 3rd film, the soon-to-be-released Fall of Usher. Also joining us today is a fan favorite, the extraordinary photographer and our good friend from London, Mark Mawston.'t website is markmawston.com. That's MarkMawston. You can also buy his work on rockarchive.com, the world's finest print archive specializing in rock and roll imagery, featuring some of the most famous rock photographers on the planet. Mark's photographs have been featured in many of the leading titles in the music press, such as Mojo, OMM, and Music Collector. His work can also be seen in books such as I Was There, 50 Gigs That Changed the World, as well as most of the leading nationals, such as The Times, The Guardian, The Telegraph, and The Independent. His shots have appeared on CD and DVD covers and liner notes. So on with the show. We're trying to pick examples from a wide range and the eras of films that we've covered over the years. And just a quick note, we are having the contest today, but not any feedback because Mark. But rest assured, we're holding it all until the next cast. Except for a couple that we're holding until 500, I know.
Because of Mark, my word, you sound like my wife and children.
We love you.
I just think Mary was a lawyer in a past life because she's got to caveat everything.
Okay, so our movie today is the 1965 spaghetti western for a few dollars more, a.k.a. Per qualche dollaro in più. Please,
pew, pew.
Please excuse my terrible pronunciation. This Mark pick was directed by
How can you get
Leone?
Sergio Leone wrong and get that and get the title right? That's beyond me.
Oh my.
Okay, I do have a question real quick. Sergio Leone? Sergio Leone.
Leone.
Sergio Leone. That's what I say, but what am I to know? I'm a Geordie.
Yeah, you're a Geordie, but you look like you're Italian, so we'll take your word
yeah,
for
he
it.
does.
We will get onto that because that came in very handy.
Oh, okay.
Of this film. So we can get onto that story later on because obviously I don't want it to overrun.
We love you, Mark. Okay, this Mark pick was directed by Sergio Leone. It's the second movie in what is commonly known as the Dollars trilogy. Filmed in '65, it was released in Italy that year, but not shown in the U.S. till 1967. I think Vince would have watched these every day if he could have. They were such a departure from the American clean-cut hero cowboy movies of the time. He loved that the clothes and the people were dirty and ragged, and they were Italian. I would watch this just for Clint Eastwood's icy blue eyes, and I'm sure Fiona would watch it just for Lee Van Cleef.
I'm not going to say you're wrong there.
It was panned by critics when released for violence. The body count was 64, and for the very disturbing rape scene. But now it's considered a cult classic. Yay!
Wait. You didn't mention the fact that they kill a kid.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
one.
they shoot like an 18-month-old toddler,
Yes.
and that was another. And they shoot a horse.
Of course,
Yes.
we didn't get the rape scene. That was cut out. It wasn't put back in until the DVD release.
Wow.
Yeah, so we didn't get that. I mean, with England, we tend to get a lot of violence and very little sex, whereas in America you tend to get away with the sex but have lesser violence. I've always noticed that between the two differences in the countries about what's censored and what's not. So it's interesting. But yeah, the movie was cut, and it weren't reinstated till the noughties.
Wow. Well, that rape scene was. Oh. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was disturbing. So if you can revisit it, if you've seen it before, it really holds up well. Some stuff when you watch it after 10 years, you're like, why did I like this? But it's good.
I think, to be honest, Mary, I think these movies, along with the James Bond films, epitomise the 60s. Therefore, they will be timeless, because both James Bond and The Man with No Name are anti-heroes, and that never ages.
That's
that really
true.
doesn't age.
Yeah.
And to have long conversations with Vince about these and how much we loved them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I made him laugh a lot when I said, when I was a child, I saw, obviously, Bond, and then I saw Fistful of Dollars one Monday night when I was supposed to be in bed at school on a school night. And I said, for the rest of my life, I didn't know whether I wanted to be James Bond or The Man with No Name, and quite frankly, I still don't. I truly love these characters, and Bond and The Man with No Name are probably my two favorite characters in moviedom. And I know Vince was a huge fan of The Man with No Name, and just the whole way the movies looked, as you said. He loved the sort of the dirty look. It's a bit like Alien as well. Alien had that dirty look in outer space, and he liked that deep look. And this film definitely have it, and so much so that throughout the trilogy, as you call it, the Dollars trilogy, Clint Eastwood never washed his poncho once. So,
No, that's true. And apparently, okay, you remember for a few dollars more, or wait, for a fistful of dollars. See, this is me getting the $2 name movies mixed up. But in the first one, A Fistful of Dollars, he gets shot in the chest like 5 times, and so there's those holes in it. And if you watch during this film, and I haven't really noticed it so much in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but in this film you can actually see where the patched holes are, because he flips the poncho around and's wearing it backwards in this.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of bits where you can actually see where they've sewn it up.
Yeah, that's a bit of continuity. But that was Clint Eastwood's poncho, and the story goes that he did that himself, because that's what they would have done in the West, and he would have stitched it up and what have you. But a lot of his gear he brought from Rawhide, didn't he? He brought the gun, the holster, all that kind of stuff from Rawhide. So he supplied his own outfits.
Wow.
And that poncho is So he's still got that to this day. And you can see it in a few shots there. Definitely, as you say, Nick, not so much in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but definitely in this film you can see it. And of course, that shot, if we ever do Fistful of Dollars, we'll not spoil what happens in it or what happens with the holes. But that became such a big thing that when Cinema Retro did T-shirts, they actually said "Shoot for the Heart, Ramon." That was the logo on the Cinema Retro T-shirt that you could get.
Wow.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. Not that they've ever given me one. And they should.
Well, shirts are expensive, dude. You can't just be giving those away. Come on.
I've done enough interviews from talking about that, actually. There's one in the next issue of Retro. I've got an interview with a guy called John Layton coming up, and he is unbelievable. The stories. John Layton got into contact with me. I might have touched on it, actually. He read the piece I wrote about John Richardson in Cinema Retro, and phoned and got hold of me, and I couldn't believe it. This guy had never done an interview for 50 years properly, on his music career, and he had number ones. He was a big music star. Then he went to Hollywood, and he worked on The Great Escape, and he worked with Frank Sinatra on Von Ryan's Express. He did all of these amazing cult films, and even Pete Walker over here called Psycho, Schizo. So he did some amazing movies. And we had the most amazing conversation all about, his, and it was so long. Not that I ever go over the boundaries, obviously, because I never like to overrun on anything. But as usual, they've had to split it into, I think it's either 2 or 3 issues.
Wow.
Which I don't know why tends to happen with my interviews. I just don't understand it.
I don't either.
And nobody understands that, Mark. It's just a mystery of the universe.
That's probably why I still haven't run one. I've been lucky enough to be Ronda nominated 3 times, but I've still not to get one. And I think it's because they split them over three issues, and people forget what the first part was about.
Oh, well, okay. Before we go any further, I have a few shout-outs. Number 1, I want to thank Phil Pine for sending photos of the Santitos surprise package that he won. I'm so jealous. I want a Lucha figurine too. If you want to see the loot, go to the B Moviecast fan page on Facebook or the B Moviecast site on Facebook. The photos are posted there. Number 2, check out Matt St. Cyr's new podcast, Tacky on Signal. Join Matt St. Cyr and Rick Zotman as they discuss cinema past, present, and future. Nick will be posting the link on the B Moviecast site. That's bmoviecast.com. And last but certainly not least, please check out Santito on YouTube. He sent out a wonderful piece of B-Moviecast feedback that he made for YouTube. Nick's going to be posting that on our website, and I'll be posting it on the Facebook pages, so check it out. I definitely need to take some lessons on technology from him. And we'll be playing the audio from it on our next cast in our feedback section, along with the feedback that we're going to hold until next cast. And, okay, there's one more. Number 4. This is from Lenny. He said, I'm so sorry for not acknowledging earlier that he got Santito's prize package. He said, I'm so sorry, Lenny. He had a house fire throw him off for a bit. Our dog Dixie saved us with only minutes to spare. I'm so sorry. He says, Santito is more than generous with his gifts. Several high-quality movie cards, a Blu-ray of Captain Marvel cereal, a book, a Mexican wrestler action figure. His generosity was way above and beyond. Please extend my heartfelt thanks and apologies to him. I can only believe that this is a reflection of his character and is going to be remembered for a long time to come. Best wishes.
Aww.
Best wishes to all of you, and especially Santito. And that's from Lenny. So, well, thank you for letting us know, and I'm so sorry about your house.
Yeah, for real.
That's not the first time I've heard that dogs have saved people in fires either. It's quite amazing.
Well, my cat wouldn't.
What? Your cat wouldn't?
My cat wouldn't. My cat would be like...
Kitty would just leave and say, find somebody else to feed me.
Yeah. She'd go to my neighbor or something.
It's so strange. Did you say that the second guy his surname was Sincere? Sincere?
St. Cyr.
But that is unbelievable. I just mentioned John Layton.
Mm-hmm.
He played, basically he was in a show in the early 60s in England, and he played a pop singer in this series called Johnny Sincere. Yeah?
Wow.
It's spelled it was like sincere, yeah, but it's sincere, which is exactly the same as what that guy's called. And I mentioned it just before that happened. That's such a coincidence.
Wow.
And the song that he sang as Johnny Sincere started him on his road to fandom, and it's a song called Johnny Remember Me, which is a truly great track produced by Joe Meek. And he sang that as Johnny Sincere, Johnny Remember Me. It's quite amazing that that guy's name was the same as John Layton's. That's madness.
Cool.
Yeah, lovely bit of trivia there.
I'm sure
Not
he'll love it.
that kind of thing, though, but there you go.
On with the contest. The answer was In Like Flint from 1967. And our first prize is a wonderful book donated by our sponsor, Twyla Muneer Brooks, from the Twyla Muneer Brooks Law Firm.
Yay!
Yay! It was written by a high school friend of hers and looks like a lot of fun. It's called The Spirit Hollows and was written by P.R. Brewer. The story is Quinn, an assistant undertaker, dreams of leaving his dreary job at his mother's funeral home for a life of adventure. His half-sister Zora, an inventor, plans to prove what a brilliant scientist she is and settle a secret grudge. Together, they set out to fight the spirits that have roamed the hollows ever since the Great Awakening. One reviewer said this was like Ghostbusters meets a well-merged steampunk version of the setting from Sleepy Hollow. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it is, actually. I'm looking forward to checking it out myself, so.
Winner is Bill Mize.
Bill Mize. Well, that'll save on shipping.
Yeah, just drive down the road. He just moved
Well, that's
there,
it.
right?
So for the listeners who don't know, Bill loves the podcast so much that he decided to move to just outside of Lexington, Kentucky, where I live. And so at some point, I'm going to end up meeting up with Bill Mize. And, that'll be fun. But now, if he's a prize winner, yeah, we're not wasting postage.
Wow. Wow. Okay, our second movie today was donated by Patrick Kelly. It's a DVD called Prototype. According to Patrick, this 1983 TV movie is a wistful, bittersweet retelling of the Frankenstein story. It stars David Morse as a kindly humanoid and Christopher Plummer as his creator. As a pacifist, Plummer opposes the government use of his creation for warfare. The screenplay was written by Richard Levinson and William Link, who created Columbo and Murder, She Wrote. And the winner is Santito. Wow, okay. Congratulations, Santito. Our third prize is a mystery gift from Kenny B. Santito. Guaranteed to be worth more than the 2 minutes it took you to enter the contest. Guaranteed to be a DVD or Blu-ray, book and or magazine, and some knick-knack, and something from south of the border, preferably legal something. Again, if you win, tell us what it is so I can be jealous some more. And the winner is Pete Stima. So congratulations, Pete. I will get in touch with Santito, and you're going to get a really great package from him. And our fourth prize is a mystery gift from Nick.
From Nick's box of stuff.
Does Nick happen to know what it is, or is it going to be a surprise for everybody?
Okay, I'm not kidding, folks. There is literally a big box under my desk full of mostly movies that I've realized I own like 3 or 4 different versions of. And so you'll be getting whatever version of this movie that I've got a better version of. So, for the most part. What? It's a prize. It's a prize.
Yeah, okay.
No, actually, the last couple of times I've actually not dipped into the box even. I've just been sending copies of my books because, promotion.
Okay.
I get to write those off my taxes.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I know. I saved $3 on my taxes last year because of all my write-offs. God, I'm such a brilliant tax person.
I still have to do mine. Oh. When's tax?
Mary,
I know. When is it?
You have 12 days, Mary.
Oh, yuck.
Yes, yuck. Get your taxes done.
Okay, the winner of the next prize is Blake McCurdy.
All right, Blake.
Yes.
Wait, didn't Blake win something for me already?
Yes. Just recently.
Now I got to make sure I don't send Blake the same thing twice.
Another copy of it.
Well, I do actually have some doubles in here. So it's like, I better check and see what I sent him.
Yes, you better.
Yeah, but all right. Well, is that it for the contest, though?
That's it for the contest.
All right. Well, good deal. And now let's see. We got a movie to talk about, right?
Yes.
Just out of interest, guys, I just thought I'd ask before we got onto the movie. Have you seen The Batman yet?
No, I was going to go and something happened and I couldn't.
What about you, Nick?
I have not seen it yet either. It's been one of those things. I've been traveling so much. I have not, between traveling and trying to get the house in order. I mean, it's pretty much when I'm home, we're working on the house. So, the only movie I've seen in the theaters since God, probably January was oh God, I can't even think of the name of it. It's the new one with Tom Holland.
Spider-Man.
No, I saw Spider-Man, but the one he
Uncharted.
did. Yes, that's it.
Uncharted.
Yeah,
Uncharted was great. I
yeah,
really liked
loved Uncharted.
Lots of
What was the new Wes Anderson movie?
Do what?
The new Wes Anderson movie.
There's a new Wes Anderson. What are you saying, Mary?
Yeah.
I saw that.
new. Oh, yeah. That was the French Dispatch.
That's it. I watched that
great.
one. I was just amazed.
Yeah, actually, I'm a big Wes Anderson fan, and the French Dispatch was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably my favorite Wes Anderson movie right now.
Yeah. I'm going to have to watch it about 15 times because there's so much detail and weird little stuff in it.
I really want to watch it. There's so many movies I want to catch up on. I tried to catch up on The Power of the Dog, and we were either going to watch, it was Emma's birthday like a week or so ago, and we were going to watch West Side Story or Power of the Dog, and for some reason we chose Power of the Dog, which lasted about half an hour before Emma turned around and goes, "This is not something I want to watch on my birthday."
Wow.
And I must admit, it's something that I haven't rushed back to watch either. Normally, I never just leave a movie hanging. I'll normally go back, quite quickly to watch it. And I have no real interest in going back and watching the rest of Power of the Dog. But I will, because obviously it's Jane Campion, and I think she's great, as in the piano and everything. But oh no, I thought Cumberbatch was great, but I think I'll just start it from the beginning again and watch it again on my own.
Wow.
But they disliked it so much that it sort of kind of darkened it for me as well, because they just said this is awful. They really disliked it, and I think it's one of those movies that you're either on one side of the fence or the other. It's an intro. Have you guys seen it, The Power of the Dog?
No.
No, I that's been one that I've been putting off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, it's kind of, and hearing you talk about it's making me think I'm going to put it off a little bit longer. I do want to see it eventually.
I am in no rush to watch the rest of it, to be honest.
Wow.
But who knows? And then someone turned around to me last week. It was lovely. I got invited by Sony to go and see Morbius, and and I was talking to them. I said, out of interest, have you seen Power of the Dog? And they went, yeah, the ending is very bleak and made no sense. And I went, what? The ending's like that? I said, I'm halfway. You're not even halfway through it. I think it's bleak. It's not making any sense whatsoever. But so there you go. So they sort of kind of put me off for good, I think. But we'll see. I will give it a chance. But Morbius was a lot of fun.
Wow.
That was fun.
Well,
I'd recommend that just because it's like, Nick, do you remember a comic called Dracula Lives?
Yes, I do. I used to read that. So, yeah.
It's one of the only comics that in 2000 AD were one of the few comics that I ever really got into. And Dracula Lives, this is like a live action version of Dracula Lives.
Okay.
It even looks the same, the way it's done. It's got the real comic book flavor of Dracula Lives. And I liked it. I mean, it was amazing because Sony have got these new offices now on Canal Walk in the Brunel building. And they're on the 14th floor. And I took ages to find it, but they're surrounded by canals with barges on them selling alcohol and oysters and stuff. It was an incredible location. And then you went up to the 14th floor and you had this view right over the whole of London. It was quite mad. So that was impressive enough. But the theatre only sits about 40 or 50 people, tops. And you have these huge sort of stereo speakers on the edge of every aisle. So they do this thing at the beginning where the first 5 minutes, it just shows you what it's like and have dripping water and stuff like it. It's unbelievable. That was probably more impressive than the film, to be honest.
Wow.
But it's amazing.
It's definitely worth seeing Morbius. It's not incredible, but everybody left there saying, well, that was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. But I liked it. I thought it was good fun.
I tried watching West Side Story, and I've turned it on 3 times now, and I get bored.
Right. Okay. Well, no, I definitely want to watch it because it's Spielberg. I watch anything Spielberg.
I'll get through it eventually, but it's just a hard watch for me.
But going back to it, I took Mauve to see the Batman, and it became probably, I think it's either her second or third favorite movie of all time.
Wow.
Oh wow.
We loved it. We absolutely loved it. But there was hardly anyone in the cinema when we went and saw it, and it was getting such a backlash of everyone. There was all these people on Instagram saying, this is rubbish, everything's too dark these days, blah, blah, blah. And like the Bond thing, when No Time to Die came out, you had all these people eulogizing on Instagram saying how brilliant No Time to Die was. And I was thinking, it's not, but a lot of these people are logged by Eon and stuff like this. So when they give a very, very favorable review, they'll get invited to stuff probably. I don't know how it works now, but that's kind of what it seemed like. And I just thought a lot of the reviews for No Time to Die were so over the top positive. I just thought, why don't you just be honest and just say it was absolutely all over the shop? So many mistakes in it, and the ending was rubbish. Why don't you actually just tell the truth? And so I had a conversation about, a couple of months after all this. And I said to one of these guys who'd written this amazing review, saying, I still think it's flawed. I think it's not as bad as I initially thought, but it's certainly not in my top 10 or even in my top 15. And he said, I think it's flawed as well. And I just thought, hang on, you said it was a masterpiece. What are you going on about? And it just really kind of annoys me when people say one thing and then, when you're in private, just say something completely different. I just say, just be honest. If it's not very good, it's like, we had the story, like, when we go to the Bond things and they say, everyone says, Goldfinger or Majesty Secret Service are their favourites just because they're supposed to. Let's be honest. I love, when I say I love A View to a Kill, they go, what? So you shouldn't, be saying that kind of thing. But you've got to be honest. Everyone's taste is different. And with this Batman, they were all slagging Batman off. Me and Mauve came out with thinking it was a masterpiece, and we said, oh, they'll soon change their tune, And then I saw someone else again do the same thing, saying, oh, I was dragged along to see Batman for the second time and have completely reassessed it. It's a masterpiece. And I'm thinking, right, okay, but everyone's allowed to do that. I did that with, with a few films where I've really disliked them and then thought, actually, no, they're really good, So it's interesting that, but people's tastes are differing. But yeah, the Batman is really, really worth seeing. But if you can, try and catch it while it's still at the cinema because it is very cinematic. And they are right, it's very dark. And in every scene, it's raining. So I can imagine a lot will be lost on a smaller screen. Unless you've got 4K or a really good Blu-ray. So, check it out if you can at the cinema because I definitely think it's worth it. And he's great. He's really, really good.
Well, and I want to see the Batman. Yeah. It's one of those things I just haven't had time to go to the movies lately.
I know.
And, and it was funny because I was in Texas last week and I was bored one evening and I wanted to go see a movie. And the cinemas that I like to see films in when I'm in San Antonio, there's the Alamo Draft House. Well, they weren't running movies. The one that I like to go to that was right near my hotel was actually closed, and I don't know if it's going to reopen. And the other one, the movies I wanted to see weren't running. It's like, okay, fine. So, but I'm definitely going to check out the Batman. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I watched The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
Oh yeah, I wanted to see that. Yeah, Jessica Chastain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was good, but I don't like Tammy Faye so much that. I mean, it was pro Tammy Faye, like making her. You have feelings for her, and you feel bad for her, and you love her, and all this stuff. That's the trend of the movie, and I don't like Tammy Faye, so I was like, nah.
I mean, we can't skip around it. While we're talking about movies, what was your reaction to the Will Smith thing at the Oscars? What was your reaction to it? Do you think it was justified? Did you think it was a mistake? What did you think, both of you?
Mary, I'll let you start it out.
I watched it and thought, well, okay. I started watching the Oscars. I got really bored as usual. I don't like the humor of the Oscars because it's really snarky and mean. So and these people just talk and talk and talk. So I kind of started watching it. Then I stopped. Then I got on my phone and I'm, going through Facebook and stuff and saw people start posting this stuff. So I went I rewound my television set to that point, and I watched the scene, and I watched it, and my mouth kind of like opened up afterwards, and I'm like, was this a game? Is this fake or something? And then he starts screaming obscenities, and I thought, they need to take him out right now because he just committed assault on national television. And that's not a good thing to show young children growing up. That's not a good role model. So that was my take on it.
Okay, and that's pretty interesting. Well, that's a pretty typical take, actually, in a lot of it. I have a mixed take on it, which is, if Fiona were having problems like his wife is, and somebody were making jokes about it, I don't know that I wouldn't get up and smack them. But at the same time, I don't think it's a great response.
Right.
Now, but all that said, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's a heat of the moment thing,
Well, it was a heat of the moment thing. But one thing that I'll be honest, yeah, he smacked him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. You know what? Good, bad, whatever, it happened. I'm just tired of all the people I see, especially the celebrities who are like, I'm triggered now. I'm in trauma because of this. No, you're not. If you are, you need more therapy than anyone ever can imagine or give you.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it was a dude slapping another dude because the dude made a joke about the guy's wife.
Yeah.
Okay, and you know what? They were all professionals. It should have been handled better.
Yeah.
Will Smith probably should not have done it, but again, heat of the moment. I can understand him doing it.
Okay, but see, I didn't know that she had a problem. I thought that was just her hairstyle, because I've seen her with that hair for so many years now. I just thought that was her. So when I heard the joke, I actually remembered the G.I. Jane movie and thought that is the hairstyle, and I thought that was a joke. I didn't even realize she had a problem.
Well, and that's my one thing that kind of I try and put it in perspective is that I don't know whether Chris Rock or anybody associated with that actually knew.
Yeah. Or if he did,
that she had that problem.
It did, Nick. It's all come out. Basically, there's a history between Chris Rock and Jaden. I mean, there's a history there. He's taken snipes at her for many years at different events.
Yeah.
And and the alopecia thing, it was on the internet and what have you. I mean, but the thing is, which I find interesting, is that, like you, Mary, it just looks as though it's a shaved hairstyle. My uncle had alopecia, and all of his hair fell out. And due to stress, and then it all grew back, and he had this incredible Elvis type mane for the rest of his life, and it was incredible. But it's obviously hers is one that hasn't grown back as much, but it looks as though she's just had it in that style. But I liked it. But the fact is, it got to a point, and and with Ricky Gervais and everybody else, that they were just being snipey. And whereas at one time, Hollywood was untouchable. There were stars, who had beautiful, small, hand-tinted images that were put on fans' walls. Now, all it's all about is just, getting out the dirty washing, pulling these people down and what have you.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point, especially with Chris Rock having yet another dig, when he doesn't need to. He must know that it was going to be really hurtful, and that she is very sensitive about it. There's no need for it. You can be funny without being cruel.
Well, that's why I stopped watching those shows, because that's the humor now.
And it's wrong. And my daughter, I have to put, everything is so PC now, and you have to be very careful about anything you say. But when it comes to those kind of shows, they are so horrible about everybody. And I like Ricky Gervais, but I've watched him. I thought, you know what? There's no need for all this.
Yeah.
It's basically, taking the brass polish off what should be a wonderful event and just, covering it in tar.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where people had to react. Now, I, at first, thought, do you know what? I'm really glad that Will Smith actually did some kind of thing where he reacted, but not as happy as the Oscar people would have been, because nobody really watches the Oscars very much anymore. It is so out of step with everything.
Yeah.
It's funny. They get people on who are absolutely awful. I mean, to be honest, we had the BAFTAs. The BAFTAs this year were awful. I can't remember the comics, the Australian comic who did it with the blonde hair who's lost loads of weight. I can't remember her name at the minute. It just shows she was so awful. And I just thought, they're not even close to what they used to be. And the Oscars aren't as close as what they used to be. They used to be an amazing event. And we've had loads where Marlon Brando turned down his Oscar. That's all memorable. But the fact is, the sad thing is that Will Smith and Chris Rock, doesn't matter what they're going to do or what they've done beforehand, this is what they're always going to be remembered for.
Yeah.
And it moment of heat, which is a real shame. But the people I feel most sorry for are obviously Will Smith's wife, because, she's sensitive enough and she shouldn't have had to go through all that. But it's the people who came afterwards.
Yeah.
Because nobody talked about all these amazing achievements, and it was overshadowed by someone losing their temper and giving a slap. And that's completely unfair.
Yeah.
And Will Smith has recognized that now. Now he's calmed down. And, let's be honest, I prefer Will Smith to Chris Rock any day. I think he's funnier. I think he makes better films.
Yeah.
And that's not.
Yeah.
But, it's just got to a point now where it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And now you're getting everyone jumping on the PC wagon saying this, that, and the other. If the Oscar people had done it right, they would have said, right, okay, let's take you to one side now, take it on. But they knew that Will Smith was going to literally be on in 20 minutes' time. There's no way they didn't know, because they'd written all the cards out that he was going to win.
Yeah.
So imagine what it would have been like for them when the Oscar was announced, and it's Will Smith, and everyone would go, oh, yeah, and it would just highlight it even more.
Yeah.
So they couldn't.
Yeah.
When they're saying, we asked him to leave, do you really believe that? I certainly don't. Because they've written out all the cards. They know he's going to win it. And they'll probably go, yeah, just hang around, mate, and, we'll talk about it. It's ridiculous, the whole thing. And, whereas now, everyone's saying that the Oscars are doing the right, they're not. These award ceremonies, they've let it slip. The quality control has gone through the floor.
Yeah.
And they must have been overjoyed that something that everybody's talking about happened. But did it really have to be like this? Could it not have been something funnier or something like this, or well scripted? Just someone actually doing a good presentation. And don't get me wrong, I don't know the three presenters that you had very well at all, because obviously we don't get those guys over here very much. So I don't know anything about them. But it seems as though for years there's been nobody who's been really good. The guy who used to always do it brilliantly was Billy Crystal, I remember. That was about it.
Yeah.
But but the Oscars now aren't even shown over here. They're shown on one channel. So we used to always get them live on the BBC. We've not had it for about 10 years now.
Wow.
That just shows that it just has, I'd love to see the highlights. But do I really want to sit through it? And when I sat through the BAFTAs this year, I just thought, what on earth? We get Stephen Fryman, who are really clever and articulate, and, Graham Norton, who's very good. But the one we had this year, she was just dreadful. And I just think, the need to, everyone needs to get their stock together.
Yeah.
And celebrate movies. And I just think that a bigger thing needs to be made about let's, for example, the deaf guys for Coda winning that. That's a wonderful achievement. But it's all been overshadowed, and I feel desperately sorry. And at the end of the day, although the Oscars won initially because everyone was talking about them, in a way they're going to lose now, because people are just now starting to think, they could have handled this better.
Yeah.
And the people who came after this event have really lost out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just it. To me, it's a celebration. And in the last 10 years or so, they've turned it into a roast.
It's like a roast. Exactly, Mary. That's exactly what it's turned into. Yeah. It's a roast.
Yeah.
These are the people, some people, look up to stuff. They have stars as their idols, yeah?
Yeah.
They have really crappy lives. They have people, I love Clint Eastwood, which is why we're doing this film. You have certain people who you've always looked up to who will make you happy. There are lots of people in America and England who will look up to Will Smith and think he's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But in the end, these people come down and all they do is ridicule people.
Yeah.
And you just think, why are you being like this? Why don't you actually celebrate yourself? The world has got enough negativity at the moment with everything that's going on. Far more important things than the Oscars, in the Ukraine and what have you. Far more important things. But, for once, could we not have 3 hours or whatever it is now, just as a celebration to talk about good things and celebrate things rather than deriding everything and just making everything bleak?
Mm-hmm.
Not needed. And it's about time everyone just sort of thought, yeah, let's stop all this roasting and just get on with having a bit of fun. That's what they're all about. They are a celebration. You're right, Mary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, it's Clint Eastwood who right horses, not me.
Yeah, speaking of somebody who slaps people, let's talk about Clint Eastwood in this.
With a body count of 46.
Yeah,
Oof.
it was a good body count, and that includes what?
Is it not 64 people are knocked off on this? It's a 46. I thought it was 64.
Oh, maybe I
was
got
he-
it backwards.
Because I remember it was one
Well-
less than the year it was made in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go. So it's 64 people.
Okay.
So,
Well, thank you.
hey,
I lost
Well-
count.
It's a different kind of fistful.
Yeah.
fistful of bodies. But, and that's, I mean, the movie starts out and you got somebody that you don't even know who this is or who shoots him. But, you know that's Sergio Leone doing the whistling.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah.
While we're starting it, should we drop that in? When you get the chance to edit it, drop it in now, because as Nick quite rightly points out, when it came out on the soundtrack, it didn't have any of these extras, and then a few years ago there was this incredible CD released which had all of the alternative versions and lots of the incidental music that was never used, and I managed to get one, and Nick now has it. So if you want to stick it in now, Nick, this is at the beginning. Just before the main title start, this is Sergio Leone making all the noises with the gun and everything and doing the whistling. So here we go.
I think it's incredible that he filmed the whole movie with no sound.
Well, he always did that, Mary, because what happened was, because there were so many different people obviously from Italy and Spain and what have you, even the Clint Eastwood parts and Lee Van Cleef, they had to go back and redub everything they'd said, even though obviously they're speaking English. And they had to go and redub it. But the one thing that I truly love about this is that the one thing that was in place, and I will get onto this when we run through the cast, is that Ennio Morricone did all of the soundtrack before the movie was made, and then Sergio Leone would film around the soundtrack.
That's
very
amazing.
So The Bad and the Ugly, very much so Once Upon a Time in the West, but in this movie, especially with the watch and everything like this, he had 60 seconds to what it was called, and he had to do this incredible theme with the watch in 60 seconds, which is a masterpiece, and I always put on compilations for friends. But it's just amazing that he did that. And what I've always said, Mary, about these movies is that because they're choreographed to the music, these basically aren't just westerns, they're western ballets, because even the gunfights and everything are beautifully orchestrated and shot, and the depth of field, and as you say, the close-up with the eyes, they're all important.
Oh, yeah.
And are literally western ballets. And he took this from this movie to its zenith in Once Upon a Time in the West. It's a masterpiece, I think. And out of all of those films, we've got, obviously For a Few Dollars More is always been my favorite above Fistful of Dollars. The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. Everyone tends to like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly the most. And out of all of the Leone scenes, it has the one truly great scene in it, which is where he took us running through all the gravestones, called Ecstasy of Gold, and it's Ennio Morricone's most amazing piece of music. It's something I want at my funeral, actually. I truly love that piece of music, and I've always loved it ever since I was a kid. And that's the one scene, if you were to pick any scene from the $3 movies, that would be the scene for me, Ecstasy of Gold from The Good, the Bad and Ugly. But as a movie as a whole, I think Fistful of Dollars has always been my favorite. There's something just really great. The first one's wonderful, but they really get into it with the second one, and there's so much going on in The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. It's a longer watch, but this is just the right length, and the style, the music, everything just comes together. It's a bit like Goldfinger did in the Bond movies. It's when the elements were there, but then everything comes together, and I think that's the beautiful thing about this film.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I agree with you on pretty much everything you said there, Mark. But one thing I do want to point out, your favorite scene is in any of them is the Ecstasy of Gold bit at the Sad Hill Cemetery, right?
Right.
Have you seen Sad Hill Unearthed?
No.
It's a documentary?
Look for that. It's a documentary because the people who live near where they built the set for that cemetery, that was a set. There was no cemetery there.
All those crosses were put there, weren't there? It's truly amazing.
And they made a documentary in 2017 called Sad Hill Unearthed. And I'll see about putting a link to it in the show notes. But this documentary actually the town decided, a bunch of people in the town decided to get together, and they went to the site and they rebuilt Sad Hill Cemetery. And
wow.
while we're talking about them doing this rebuilding, it goes through the history of making the film. And it's just extremely interesting to watch. As a fan of Sergio Leone films, I think you pick up a lot about what was going on politically in Spain, why they were able to shoot so many big films there. And, it was just a fascinating documentary, and I really, really liked the end of it.
What was going on in Spain?
What?
What was going on in Spain that made it?
I watched the documentary, Mary.
Oh, send it to me.
Well, I'm definitely going to watch that, Nick.
Okay, I will send it to you, Mary, but let's just say, and you know what, I don't have a lot of the information up in front of me, so don't ask for names.
Okay.
But basically, by the time they filmed The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Leone was able to get the Spanish government to put the military at their disposal.
Wow.
And so the Spanish military went out and helped assemble that cemetery. And the Spanish military put on...
As well.
Yeah, they
most
put on Civil War... Sorry, what, Mark?
Said most of the soldiers were military as well.
That's what I was about to say. They put on Civil War uniforms, and the Spanish army was the army of the North and the army of the South in the film. So think about that for a minute, because that's one of the things that always amazed me. And I know we're not talking about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but one of the things that always amazes me is right towards the end, before the Sad Hill bit, there's this huge battle over a bridge. And just the scope of what they're doing there just boggled my mind. And then to find out that it partially is because, the Spanish government was, let's just say, they were not the nicest government in the 60s, but the guy liked Sergio Leone. So, and they liked having films made. So, yeah, they put a ton of resources, made a ton of resources available to make that film. And if you watch the Dollars trilogy, it's sort of like watching Clint Eastwood's salary. Okay, for a fistful of dollars, I think he was paid $15,000. For a few dollars more, I think he was paid $50,000. And for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it was $250,000 plus a percentage of the gross.
Yeah, it was 10% of the gross, Nick, which far outweighed $150,000, because by that time these movies were huge. I mean,
exactly.
For a few dollars more was the biggest Italian movie of all time in 1965, and obviously, as you said, Mary, it wasn't released here till '67. But by the time 67 rolled around, you then had The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly following 68. And it was by that time these had built up such a huge following that, they were seen throughout the world, and they were huge.
Yeah.
So Clint Eastwood did very, very, very well out of it.
Mm.
Well, it made him go from being a TV star, and not even that big a TV star when you get down to it. He was one of an ensemble cast in Rawhide.
That's
right?
True.
Actually, we might as well get into it now, Nick. Well, now we're touching on it. Let's get into Clint Eastwood and his history. Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk Clint. Okay, and when we talk Clint, Mary immediately has her sigh. Oh,
I love those eyes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, so did Sergio Leone. That's why he zooms into them so much. But that's what got me. There's the opening scene where he lifts his hat up in the rain, and you just automatically, you don't have to be, a woman, gay, or whatever it is, to just think, wow.
Yeah.
Now that is something else. It's like the very virile Sean Connery in Dr. No or something. There's something about Clint Eastwood. Doesn't matter what sex you are, you just think, wow, look at him. Now there's a fine figure of a fella.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool. He is the epitome of cool. Not just 60s cool, but cool full stop. And when he just raises his eyes up and then looks, there is nothing cooler than that scene.
I know. And it's
There's no
the whole screen.
Yeah, there's no dialogue needed. But that's why Sergio Leone loved it, because he used to employ, and we'll get onto it, people like Claude Kinski and all that kind of stuff. He would constantly use people with very interesting faces, because he had this huge panache of literally the entire cinema screen would be full of these faces. And he got some very unusual, like the hunchback and the guy at the beginning of this film where he's shot. They are just what you would call unusual, to be polite, and he would dot his movies from, he would go around even circuses and, stuff like this, looking for people with these kind of faces or deformities and what have you, because in the West that's what people would have looked like. There were no doctors really looking after people, so when your teeth fell out, they fell out, or if you got shot in the head or in the face or that's what happened. That's how your face was. So he tried to make, as with everything, authentic, and even the faces were authentic. But the fact that the thing that gets me is that Clint Eastwood, yeah, he may have been in Rawhide and in Burbank or what have you, but by the time it gets to a few dollars more, when he looks up, he looks as though he's been riding around in the desert for about 5 years, because the lines in his eyes, and you're right, they're like, his eyes are like a pool in the middle of a desert.
Yeah,
they're so blue, and the way Sergio Leone shoots it just really just makes you go, wow, that's a great shot. That's truly great.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a good looking guy. But he did really well, because literally, what was it? Probably 7 years before that, he was in Revenge of the Creature and Tarantula, and he did, as a guy who had a mouse in his pocket in Revenge of the Creature, and he didn't even get billing in Tarantula because he had a mask over his face as one of the pilots bombing the Tarantula with napalm.
Yeah,
he did pretty well, pretty quickly, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and, it launched him. It launched the whole genre of the spaghetti Western, really, because, let's face it, A Fistful of Dollars really, opened up the genre. And he only did three spaghetti Westerns, but that really changed everything for the whole Western genre. And even if you look at Clint Eastwood's other Westerns that he did after that, I mean, he did Hang 'em High, which is just a dark movie, and then of course he did Paint Your Wagon, which wow, what? Okay, can I just say what a crazy departure?
I saw that recently. That is a truly mad film.
It is.
My mum loved that film. She thought it was great, but the soundtrack's fantastic, but Clint even sings, I talk to the trees or something in that. But that brought number one for Lee Marvin over here with their Wandering Star. That was number one over here, and the B-side was Clint Eastwood singing I Talk to the Trees. So a bit weird, but there you go. Very as far away from Coogan and Dirty Harry as you can imagine.
I know. And then, the movie he does right after Paint Your Wagon is Kelly's Heroes, which is probably my favorite World War II film. And I point that out because they do that homage scene when they're in the little village in I think it's France. Yeah, they're in the little village in France, and they have Clint Eastwood and Telly Savalas and somebody else. It was it was Odd Job, but I can't remember who played him. Or not Odd Job, Oddball. But,
Oddball,
and they had them walk out in front of the tanks, and they're playing the gunfighter music when they're meeting the Germans.
Yeah,
and it's just brilliant.
Donald Sutherland. So
Thank you, Donald Sutherland. Sorry, I'm losing my names today, but
but it's interesting, Nick. What I didn't know was, until Cinema Retro did it, we did a whole magazine on Kelly's Heroes. And if you're such a big fan of it, I'll try and get you a copy. I think I've got a spare somewhere, because they're completely not sold out. But I found out from John Landis, this was John Landis' first real film, and he went out there as a runner, and the stories he told us about Kelly's Heroes were amazing. Some of which we could never use. I mean, literally, the story, he told the most incredible stories about the making of, and Telly Savalas and Clint Eastwood and what went on. And it was while he was out there filming this that this is where the burial, where they buried someone into the ground. Yeah, so it gave him the whole idea of American Werewolf from London, because he saw a gypsy funeral. And the gypsy funeral was, they buried them facing up, and the coffin, instead of lying in the ground, went down so they faced upright, and that was to ward off evil spirits, so they didn't come back to life. And so the whole idea for American Werewolf by filming Kelly's Heroes, and he started writing American Werewolf while on the Kelly's set. He was a stuntman as well. He did lots of this, because that's where John Landis started out as a stuntman as well. So he did loads of stunts. And unbelievably, he was a stuntman as well on Once Upon a Time in the West. So, talking about Sergio Leone. So it's just incredible. So that's when, your favorite movie, one of them, American Werewolf in London, the bit where they hit the guy and he goes through the plate glass window, as we know, that's John Landis, because he wanted to nod and say, yeah, I used to be a stuntman. So he said, that scene I'm doing myself. And that's where it all comes from. So he was one of the guys constantly blown up in Kelly's Heroes.
Wow.
That's brilliant.
Wow.
Try and dig you out, because it's John Landis's bit, and he tells you about the guy who made it and the director. It's so beautiful, because, he's a walking encyclopedia. When you met him, Nick.
Yeah.
He's a walking encyclopedia of old Hollywood. He knows everybody. I mean, he used to have lunch with Hitchcock, and he used to ask him all these questions. So what I'm trying to do is next time, I literally got a text off him yesterday, because I sent him this amazing American Werewolf poster, and he sent me a picture of someone who's had a great tattoo put on them, of American Werewolf. And so next time he's over, I do want to. I'd really like to interview him about his lunches with Hitchcock, because I can imagine they were amazing.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
I can only imagine. That's amazing.
Wow.
But, sorry, we're going off on a tangent, but but that's right, Kelly Fury. But he also made like strange movies like Joe Kidd and stuff like that. There were some the odd ones, but throughout his history. But it wasn't until he got to High Plains Drifter, which I truly think's a masterpiece.
Yeah,
that's just a complete a tip of the Stetson to Sergio Leone.
Yeah,
and actually, doesn't he actually say in a couple of movies to Sergio, because I know he always thanked Don Siegel for and to Don and what have you, but I think isn't it in The Unforgiven where he actually says for Sioji, for Sergio Leone? I think he does. I think he thanks him in it.
Wow.
And everyone he made after it, because you've got obviously Pale Rider, and this is the thing: is it the same character? Because when he comes back in in a couple of the movies, he actually is death, isn't he? He is a ghost. The High Plains Drifter.
Yeah.
He is a ghost. That's why he comes out of the the heat haze, and then disappears back into the heat haze and paints the town red because it's hell.
Yeah.
And it shows him at the beginning being killed, and you think to yourself, is that the man with no name? And he's never said, no, it's not.
True.
He's always said, well, that's for you to decide. And I think that, is, and a great touch. And, I truly love that. So when he did the Western, and you know how much I love Coogan's Bluff. Mm-hmm. Whatever he did after that, always had a bit of the man with no name, and even right up to Dirty Harry. Dirty Harry had loads of the man with no name touch. But it's worth touching on now. We always say the man with no name, but of course he does have names in every single one of the movies, doesn't he? Because he's Joe in Fistful of Dollars, he's Manco in this film, and then he's Blondie in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So why they say he's the man with no name is beyond me, because he has a name in every single movie.
That's a good point. And
it's really
it's also funny because they said that his character was not the same character in every one of the movies, and yet his character was the same character in every one of the movies. And I think like you brought up the name Manco, which is like Spanish, I think, for lame of hand.
It just, in Italian it means just lame or crippled.
Yeah. But the idea is that he's one-handed, and if you watch, and this is brilliant on Clint Eastwood's part, I think, or maybe it was Sergio Leone, or maybe it was both of them, but he always, he's always doing stuff with his left hand, and there's points when he's fighting guys with just his left hand because he's keeping his other hand on his gun.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. It does translate to left-handed as well, Nick. So Manco, it does mean crippled hand and what have you, but it also translates to left-handed as well. So that's exactly you're right. That bit where he goes for the shootout in the saloon, he doesn't use anything bar one hand. And for years I thought, wow, he's doing all that with one hand. It's brilliantly shot. But that was down to Sergio Leone, because he used to do this thing. There's brilliant makings of on the DVDs that came out and the Blu-rays that came out with Sir Christopher Frayling, who's a lovely, lovely man, and who I've met several times and talked, Sergio Leone with. And he used to say, "Watch me, Clint, watch me, Clint." And he used to act out every scene for Eastwood to follow. So when it was the one-handed stuff and what have you, that was Sergio Leone, and his input on that was quite amazing.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Did you guys watch Play Misty for Me?
Oh, I love Play Misty for Me.
Yeah.
That's the first one Eastwood directed as well.
Yeah.
And it's got obviously the Roberta Flack First Time Ever I Saw Your Face in there. The whole thing's brilliant. And he's the shot jock. And I think every time I see The Fog, with Adrian Barbeau, I think of Clint Eastwood as the jock in Play Misty for Me.
Yeah, I was working in a theater at the time when it came out, and I got the poster for Vince.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They're gone. We have no idea where those posters went. You know how parents are after the kid leaves home; they throw everything out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you specifically tell your parents, if you throw away any of my movie posters, there will be hell to pay. In which case, that stuff kind of hangs around. Trust me.
Yeah.
We found a cardboard Steve Martin in a closet when we were cleaning out my parents' house before we sold it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was from a standee for the movie Parenthood.
Wow.
But then again, Rock Hudson was in a closet for years. Oh, I thank you. I'm here all week.
Nice.
But out of interest, Mary,
yes.
Out of the $3 trilogy, and obviously we're not counting Once Upon a Time in the West because that's a singular movie all on its own. Did Vince have a favorite of the three? Do you know if can you remember? If he had a favorite?
I can't remember. I really can't. I think he just loved all of them so much.
Yeah.
That the reality, that when they do those close-ups on those faces, and there's the sweat and the dirt running down, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if he had a favorite. He just loved that character so much.
Did I not give Vince my Ennio Morricone photo pass? I'm sure I did. And I think he was really thrilled about it. I had a pass that I gave him. I'm sure I gave him my Ennio Morricone pass.
Yes.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because he was thrilled. It's when we saw the Bond cars, and I said, "I've got something for you," and I handed him an Ennio Morricone pass.
Yeah.
We'll get on Ennio Morricone because he's just as important as any of the actors. But yeah, Clint is absolutely superb on this. Is there anything you wanted to say on Clint, Mary?
No. I think you guys pretty much covered it.
What, you don't want to talk about his eyes some more?
I know. I just that's that's Clint Eastwood to me. Okay. Personally, I don't think I would like him if I met him, but I love those characters. He's just such a good actor that you just get sucked into that character so well. I mean, he's just a brilliant actor.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love, especially the stuff he did in the 60s and 70s are some of my favorite films, just in general. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Iger Sanction, for
Nick,
example.
One of my favorites. Very undervalued. Let's do that in the B Movie Cast. I absolutely Hemlock, the albino character, everything about that film. I really love the Iger Sanction. I think it's fantastic. George Kennedy's finest moment, as far as I'm concerned.
Actually, I would agree with you. I think that was definitely George Kennedy's finest movie, and on top of everything else, I just admire Clint Eastwood because he was out there dangling off a mountain while they were filming that.
Long before Cliffhanger.
Yeah. I mean, and this was 15 years before, 20 years before Cliffhanger. Yeah. So, but I mean, even
his later stuff, Gran Torino, that was a striking movie. That was,
as came out afterwards. That's when he made Gran Torino, and then he said, that was basically Dirty Harry, wasn't it, in retirement?
Yeah.
And that's what he said. And he said, well, it's for you to make up your own mind. But obviously, it's pretty obvious that it is Dirty Harry as a retiree.
Yeah.
And I loved Gran Torino. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Heart-wrenching.
And of course, there's Unforgiven.
Oh, of course,
which,
masterpiece.
Academy Award-winning film from 1992. So, hey, it's 30th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
And
anything walked or crawled on this earth. I mean, it's got so many quotable lines, beautifully shot, just an absolute masterpiece.
Definitely. And I mean, we could go on and on about his films. I mean, okay, the first Clint Eastwood film I ever saw in the cinema was Any Which Way You Can.
Same as me.
Which was actually...
Is that the one with the monkey in it?
Yeah, the orangutan Clyde, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Clyde the orangutan.
After that was Escape from Alcatraz, was probably the first or the second. Firefox, I remember that was one of the first. I actually saw at the cinema. This is not on TV, this is at the cinema.
Yes,
but yeah, I think Every Which Way But Loose or Every Which Way You Can, it was one of the two. And Firefox and and all those movies that came out, and they were, but he had a great run of that at that time. People don't like Firefox; I think it's too long. I quite like it, but I love Escape from Alcatraz. I think that's a great Clint Eastwood film.
Yes.
That's an amazing film, and Fred Ward, and I'm trying to remember some of the other folks in that film, but yeah, it's a really good movie. And I've actually had the opportunity to do the Alcatraz tour twice. And the really fun one to do is you go in the evening and they do the night tour and they talk about the ghosts and stuff. And they actually talk about, Frank Morris and the escape and some of that. And of course you can buy your Alcatraz memorabilia there, and they've got more copies of Escape from Alcatraz for sale there than anywhere. But
so my daughters, we have this thing in our family where we've always had this where we can walk into somewhere and know something's not right, and there's lots of stories I can tell you about that. But there's the one place where I've walked into and I've literally felt the ghosts was Alcatraz. Wow. It was the most haunted place I've ever been in my life, and the feeling in there was just like, oh my word, it was off the chart spooky in there. I mean, really odd. And I've walked into houses where I've asked the people if anything's happening there, and it has, but that's the one place where I just felt really uncomfortable. It was in Alcatraz. It had this really strange vibe to it.
I could totally see that. And, okay, it's kind of a joke. If there's such a thing as somebody who's psychically sensitive, I'm exactly the opposite. And I say that because you walked into Alcatraz and felt that. I'm pretty sure Fiona felt that when she went into Alcatraz because she's very sensitive. I mean, we went to Gettysburg and she actually got physically ill at a couple of points.
Wow.
And
I totally believe in that, though, Nick. I do believe in that. We went to, for our wedding anniversary, we went up to part of Scotland once, and we went into this amazing house which was made from when they did some opium money, basically, when the family back in the day, and it was the most amazing, beautiful house. And we got shown into this room, and I walked in there, and it was like opening a fridge door, and I just felt, there's something very odd here. And I've always had this as a kid, and it's carried on. And I said, it's a very nice room, but have you another one? And it was, it was downstairs, and then sort of said, well, yeah, we've got this one. And I said, we'll take this room if you don't mind. And they just looked at me and thought, well, it's not got the view. I said, it doesn't matter. It's fine. It's still beautiful. We're in the middle of nowhere. It's fine. And we went down to meet them later on, and they said, look, is there any reason why you changed your room? And I said, yeah, I have to be honest with you. I said, I just got a really strange feeling when I walked into that room. And this woman just looked at her husband and she goes, are you going to tell him? And I just went, what? And she says, someone was murdered in there. And I just went, right, okay. So it's just one of those strange things. And, I've totally had it throughout my life. I do believe in those kind of things. And when you say about Fiona, I mean, I can imagine Gettysburg must be something else. I mean, the feeling there. I just think you are sensitive to it.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. We went on a ghost tour, actually. And during the ghost tour, we went through an area where some children had supposedly been murdered. In Gettysburg, died during the fighting, and Fiona said that her joints all started aching. And we ended up having to leave the tour, and I took her back to the hotel, and the hotel was not in Gettysburg. It was on the other side of Gettysburg. And so we got back to the hotel, and it was our last night, and she slept, did not sleep well. Got up the next morning, she felt so bad, she laid down in the back of the car, and I drove, and I had to drive back through Gettysburg to get to the interstate to get us home. And literally, and she had a hat over her head to keep the sun out of her eyes while we were driving. And she's laying down the back, and she started moaning when we entered Gettysburg. And she didn't stop till we left.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I didn't get
I
any of
totally
that.
believe in it.
Wow.
I'm not sensitive.
No.
I think some people are and some people aren't. And I'm the kind of person that it's sort of like if you ever saw The Man with Two Brains with Steve Martin, when he's saying, "Did I make the right decision?" He's trying to get the ghost of his wife to tell him if it's okay for him to marry this woman. And literally everything in the room is spinning, the lights are flashing, and he's like, "Just give me a little sign, a tiny sign, anything." You know, he's totally oblivious to all this paranormal activity. That's me.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, because I went to Gettysburg, didn't feel that.
Well, you were probably drinking.
Well, yeah, but...
But, okay, you know what? We've gone... how did we get on ghosts? Oh, it was Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
so,
somebody tell me the story about why they... Jolly Films sued Grimaldi.
Basically, what happened was Sergio Leone fell out with the company because he didn't think. I believe it was that he wasn't paid enough, or he didn't get the right to shit off and what have you. So he basically made the second in the trilogy without the involvement of Jolly Films, and he actually called it for a few dollars more in spite, just to get back at these people because he was setting out. I don't know what the full story is, but basically that's what it is, and he didn't want anything to do with Jolly Films or what have you, and that's why he called it for a few dollars more, just to, not out of spite, but basically to have a go at these guys, sort of saying, these are my films and I'm the director and this is what I'm doing. Even though at the time, because they were the people who called him Bob Robinson, because everybody in these films had English names because they didn't want to make it out that they were Italian films. So Sergio Leone was Bob Robinson.
Oh.
So it's ridiculous when you think about it now, but try and get hold of some of those original posters with Bob Robinson on them. Worth quite a bit of money.
Whoa.
Yeah, that amazing director, Bob Robertson.
So they won in the Italian court. They said that the Joe character is public domain folklore.
That's right, yeah. It's because, in 50 songs, everyone's called Johnny. And I think, if we think about it, and, in the Wild West, people were called Joe because it was just like, hey, buddy, a lot of people were just called that. So, yeah, they couldn't win that because there were so many people called Joe. Perhaps that's why he was called Joe Kidd. Who knows?
Oh, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I haven't thought about it till this moment, and I'm very pleased. There you
Now, one thing I do think is funny, though, is, that, what is it? Lee Van Cleef's character, the Colonel Douglas Mortimer, constantly is calling Clint Eastwood kid.
I know.
And he's constantly calling him old man. And what I think's funny about that is they do look like there's this big age gap, but there was only 5 years difference in their ages.
Yeah.
It's just
applied to those movies as well, Nick. Lee Van Cleef was always called. There's an incredible western called Death Rides a Horse, and I
love that.
Yeah, it's a great film. It's a great film. The guy who's in that, he was obviously the Angel and Barbarella, Jean-Philippe Law, and he was later Sinbad, of course, in Ray's Golden Voyage. Yep. He calls him Grandad, and there was 4 years difference between them. So he's just one of those characters where he looked older, but obviously wasn't as old as everybody else, thought. And it's interesting because he got cast because, Sergio Leone wanted so many different people for Mortimer. He wanted, he wanted Henry Fonda, I think, at one time, who he later got later on. He got, I think, some of the others. I'm just trying to think who they were, but there was so many actors that he wanted to play the Colonel Mortimer. Jack Palance was one, I remember.
I think Charles Bronson, wasn't he
Bronson,
one?
Yeah. And Lee Marvin. I think Lee Marvin was one. And all of them had turned him down. And he was sitting in a cafeteria or a bar thinking, what the hell am I going to do? And he had some money on him. and he looked up, and Lee Van Cleef was standing there, and he shouted out in Italian very loudly, "I remember that face," because obviously Lee Van Cleef has such a memorable look. He looks like a hawk, predatory birds, you know. So he's got and you're talking about eyes, Mary. He too has. He's like they're just so distrustful, those eyes, you know. They look as though they've seen and done everything, and you never trust them as far as you could throw them. And he was so perfect for him, and he went across and offered him, you know, he basically offered him the part there and then, saying, I remember you from, because he was in everything from It Conquered the World right through to you know, real classic film noirs, and which Vince knew him from. And you know, so it's amazing how many he'd been on there, and he'd always played, you know, second, third, fourth, fifth billing, you know, or the heavy on the right or what have you. And he went to Almira thinking that he again was just going to be one of the guys who was going to be shot in the first 10 minutes, and then couldn't believe that he was the co-star. But of course, we've just gone on about Clint Eastwood and, you know, how successful this was and setting him on the road to fame and fortune. But Lee Van Cleef was just as lucky, because he was then automatically associated with spaghetti westerns, and unlike Clint Eastwood, who went back to America, he stayed over there, and he made something like about 28 spaghetti westerns.
Yeah,
the equivalent of $10 million then. Imagine how much that is now, you know. Incredible. So he just stayed there and made such a name for himself, and most of those movies are fantastic. Any spaghetti western, there are some great. I watched a couple recently. One of them being Django, which I loved, you know, and I hadn't seen for a long time. Death Rides a Horse, which Nick's just said he was one of his favorites. And I also saw this incredible movie that I'm sure Vince loved, Mary, called Cemetery Without Crosses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did that on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's incredible, that film. Have you done that in the podcast?
Yes, we did. And actually, The Big Gun Down is one of the films that we did we did that on the podcast, but we also did The Big Gun Down as one of our movies for the B-movie cookbook for the 1960s. Because I really liked that film, and I just thought that's a good one.
The Big Gun Down? Is that the one with the horse in the snow?
No, Cemetery Without Crosses is the one with the horse in the snow.
Okay.
Crosses, which has got the most amazing. It's even got Scott Walker, who's a great singer, you know, doing the theme tune for the Piston Colt. It's up there with the spaghetti westerns. I think it's one of the genre's greatest films. And if you've done it, I'm going to have to go back and listen to it. And while we're on, and I know we've gone off on a tangent. What are we now? An hour and a half in something? We haven't even got. We talked about Clint Eastwood. What's really important, I think it would be really good if the listeners go back. And are you guys going to be doing sort of some kind of poll or something on your favorite, you know, cast? Are you going to be doing that? Because if you've done that,
I need to set that up, actually.
I mean, you know, I've got favorites that I've loved, you know, but it would be interesting if you did a poll. It would be quite interesting going back and seeing if that was one of the ones that the listeners loved.
That's a good idea. I think I'll see about putting the poll together and post that.
I think you should. Yeah, I love the one you did on Solaris back in the day. I loved that cast. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. That was a really good cast, and I like the Alien one. I listened to the Alien one. I went back and listened to that because I was on a long car journey, and I went back and listened to Vince talk about Alien, which was a really good one as well. I liked that one.
I liked his interview with John Saxon.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, that was real good, actually.
Yeah.
But okay.
Okay. So Nick's going to do that.
We're on Lee Van Cleef, so yeah, we might as well touch on him. And obviously, you know, we've covered most of it. But is there anything you wanted to add on Lee Van Cleef?
Escape from New York.
Yeah, exactly. Did
I cut you off there, Mary?
Yeah, and I totally forgot what I was going to say now.
You were going to say you loved him in Escape from New York.
Oh, okay. Why did he do Jersey accent instead of a Southern accent in this movie?
Because he was from Jersey, wasn't he?
Yeah, but the character was supposed to be...
It's like Sean Connery, isn't it? Sean Connery's a Scottish Russian from Glasgow, you know, or Edinburgh. You know, there's not many Edinburgh Russians, you know, as there is in, you know, Hunt for Red October. But there you go. Even Ramirez, who was obviously a name in a spaghetti western and in the Highlander, you know, he was Scottish in that as well, even though he's supposed to be Spanish. Some people are just, they don't need to change their accents. And let's be honest, his voice is perfect for Mortimer. He is the epitome of cool. And you can see why he's such a great foe in this and in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly for Clint Eastwood. Lee Van Cleef has as much of a screen presence in these films as Clint Eastwood. It has to be said.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Their relationship with each other is so wonderful in this movie.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It is wonderful. The whole thing. I mean, they are like the Lennon and McCartney of spaghetti western.
Yeah. They start out like just eyeing each other up, thinking they're going to kill each other, and then they end up just
and they had
bonded.
the delightful little gun play bit with the hats.
Yeah.
And
if you ever get the chance to see this at the cinema, it's one of where the gun goes ding, ding. It's such an amazing thing because it's one of the moments in the film which doesn't need music, and it makes it all the more impressive. It's such an amazing scene, Nick. You're right. It's a great. It's a character building, and that's how they build their friendship. And then the next thing you see, they're drinking. So it's great.
And it shows just how good Mortimer is.
Well, that's it. And I think this is the bit that I didn't really pick up on until this watching, because I was thinking about the scene and as I were watching it, and they'd been talking about the fact that Douglas Mortimer, Colonel Mortimer's supposed to be this amazing shot.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of see that at the very opening when he's going after his first bounty. But I realized that Clint Eastwood's character, Manco, when he's shooting Mortimer's hat, he shoots it far enough away at a point that he can't hit it anymore.
Yeah.
And then Mortimer from that point, starts shooting Clint Eastwood's hat.
Yeah.
He shoots Manco's hat. And that is amazing. It's like, oh, wow. So he really is a good shot.
It shows his experience.
It's experience and the fact that he's got better equipment. He's been doing it longer. That the Manco, or the man with no name, is the young buck. Mortimer is the experience. And he's like he's James Bond in Q, because there's that wonderful scene where the guy's running away. That, as I said, the guy with the memorable, features, because you look at him and you think, wow, that's a face you're not going to forget in a hurry. And he's running off, and Mortimer just lets that side saddle down, and all of the guns fall out, just like a James Bond film, It's so great, and they all fall down. He picks them out very slowly, chooses which one's best, and bang, straight between the eyes. And that sets the whole tone of the film, in the fact that Mortimer is like virtually untouchable. And you always have, Clint Eastwood's very good looking and very quick on the draw, but is he as good as Mortimer?
Yeah.
This is the thing, and it's interesting, just the relationship, and you can tell that, Clint Eastwood obviously looks up to Mortimer, but obviously Mortimer kind of sees him, and which is why he keeps calling him son, as the child that he never had, which is funny enough the exact storyline to Death Rides a Horse, Nick, where he takes on Jean-Philippe Lord. He says, "You're the son I wish I always had." And Eastwood's character, Lee Van Cleef's character tends to be like that, the overseer, the father figure in these films.
Yeah.
And if we're going to talk about that, I really like Day of Anger.
Oh, that's an absolutely wonderful film as well. Yeah.
But that whole father figure thing gets kind of turned on its head in that one.
Yeah. That's a great film.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Arrow did a great release of that as well. They did Cemetery Without Crosses and Day of Anger at the same time. They're both wonderful, with loads of extras, like an hour and a half extras on them. It's great.
Oh, yeah. Arrow does really... And I've got both the Arrow versions of those films, and they do amazing releases.
Right. We go on to Jean-Marie Valente, or...
I did read that Lee Van Cleef had a really bad car accident in 1959 and messed up his knee, or blew out his kneecap or something. And that's kind of when he started drinking, and his whole career started going downhill after that. And this movie was what brought him back, and I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely. It's those words that I said before, where I said, I remember that face.
Mm-hmm.
That's that, and it just shows that that's what made him really in the end. And he sort of, people say you grow into your face. He certainly did, because he was so striking. And you see him in like It Conquered the World, and he's very good, and he's stands out. But Lee Van Cleef is also a bit of useless, well, not useless, but interesting bit of trivia. Lee Van Cleef is the guy who killed the beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Is he really?
Yeah. He was always way down in the cast list, but he's the guy who puts the radioactive shot and shoots the beast and Beast of 20,000 Fathoms. That's Lee Van Cleef.
Wow.
And he has the great line, "If it's there, I'll hit it." Which is exactly what his character's like in this. And he has that in a Jersey accent in Beast from 20,000 Fathoms as well.
Love it.
All right, so who are we going on to, Mary?
I don't know.
Well,
Sergio Leone?
Well, I was going to say...
Should we go on to the actors first? And Jean-Pierre Volonté, who's in this, and obviously, in Fistful of Dollars. And this is another of the strange things where you get the same actors cropping up in the films, even though the characters were killed off. So obviously his character, Ramon, was killed at the end of Fistful of Dollars, but here he is again. And, it doesn't really spoil anything. It's truly great. And he was the perfect choice. But obviously, the famous saying goes that, he was obviously big in Italy and in Spain and what have you. Didn't really want to do a Western, but was sort of coaxed into doing it. And Sergio Leone got so sick of his overacting that he actually made him do scenes when, even though the take was really good, he would make them do them several times, just because he knew that the last take he'd be so knackered and wound down a bit that that's the one he could use, because he was so over the top. And you do see a few things where, he is just ridiculous. And of course, Sergio Leone broke loads of rules in the fact that, this is a movie, as you said, Nick, earlier on, he kills a kid, the people get shot in the back. But the whole thing about this character is the fact that he has a spliff. And I didn't even realize that until years later, as a kid, it didn't register. Yeah. But then when I rewatched it, when the music, Ennio Morricone's music goes, because obviously he's on a trip and it's a marijuana that he's smoking, and I just didn't get that. I just thought, that explains it.
He is such a psycho in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. But brilliant. Wow. He's perfect. He's absolutely perfect in it. Yeah,
because you sense when he goes into those like fogs and hears that music, and you sense the regret that he had, even though he's a psycho. Yeah. You kind of feel bad for him at the same time that you hate him.
No, I don't feel bad for him. No, because the regret that he's feeling is not about any of the bad things that he's done. Okay, and let's not give away everything about the plot, but I got to talk about this because it does come up later. And I mean, okay, everybody's seen this movie.
Really.
If you haven't seen it, stop the podcast, go watch it.
Exactly.
Okay, because I'm going to spoil it.
Yes.
Okay, but
do it.
But the fact that he finally, we understand that his character El Indio, the Indian, he had obsessed over this woman. And all these times when he just kind of goes out into his little dream state or whatever is him remembering his one time with this woman that he just absolutely was obsessed with, that he murdered her husband, he rapes her, and then she shoots herself in the side and kills herself while he's raping her. And that's just such a dramatic scene. And he's smoking the spliffs because I don't think he can sleep unless he's stoned out of his mind because he's so haunted by this.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I do not feel bad for him.
There's the big guy who always plays his sidekick. He always does that thing with his hands, so where he says, "Gimme, gimme, gimme, gimme," because he's going to be, he's psychotic, so he needs the spliff to calm himself down, because, as you say, he's probably not sweeping. But it's interesting because that guy there, the big guy, he's in all of the movies. He's in The Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and Ugly. He's a guy called Mario Braga, I think he's called, and he's the only one who's in all three of those films, and he always plays the same guy, and he's in so many other films. Death Rides a Horse. He's always playing the same kind of character, the big character, the sidekick, the one that the main villain trusts. So he's great in that. But you're right, yeah, he does have that amazing thing where he's a psychotic and he sort of waves his hands, for the spliff. But as you said, it's only in later life that you realise, oh, that's what it is. He's trying to calm himself down.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And, and it does a decent job of calming him down, but I'm just amazed that he's able to be so deadly and effective with a gun, despite the fact that he's just stoned out of his mind half the time.
True. Very true.
Well, it's interesting because obviously they say that the guns that they used back then, and this was set in 1872, because you can see it on the newspaper on the train, that when they're shot, they couldn't shoot more than about 10 feet and they would go off target because they weren't great guns.
Yeah.
So because he was stoned, he always hit the target because he used to aim slightly left or right. You never know.
Good point.
That's a very good point. And I did, and he had that pocket watch, which he took off of, the woman that he rapes and kills.
That was
and
haunting.
That's the pocket watch that plays the chimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
the countdown.
Yeah, the countdown, because that's his thing.
It's the signature piece
yes.
of the entire film.
That's the word.
Now's the time. Let's play that pocket watch scene, because obviously it has a huge part of the finale, and it's a wonderful twist.
Yeah.
But while we're here, let's listen to this now. Let's have a listen. Right. So, that's why that piece of music is so important. And because we're on music, we've covered the actors. Should we now talk about Ennio Morricone?
Who's that guy, Mark? I've never heard of him.
Ennio Morricone, right. Okay. I'm sorry, dear listeners, but this will be not a rant, but it's just something that, I never take anything for granted in the situations that I've ever found myself. And as a child, I used to sit and listen to the James Bond soundtracks of John Barry and Ennio Morricone all the time. And, I used to sit and do my homework to them and what have you. Since I saw For a Few Dollars More, I loved the music. And to me, the music in these three films is as important as The Man with No Name or any of the other characters. It is a character unto itself. And these films would not have the standing they have, I really don't think, without the music of Ennio Morricone. Sergio Leone knew this because obviously he got the soundtracks first and then filmed around them. There's a wonderful bit in Once Upon a Time in the West where he had a camera on a crane and he played the music over several loudspeakers so everyone could orchestrate their movements to it. This is the esteem that he held Ennio Morricone and who he'd known from school. There's a great picture of Ennio Morricone and Sergio Leone in class. It's a very famous picture. It's wonderful. And there's, Sergio Leone there standing there quite rotund, and then a very cool Ennio Morricone, to the right of him. It's quite amazing that they had that all through these years and didn't really know until they met each other once again. And I had the chance through photography of meeting Ennio Morricone, which led to this amazing basic, not a relationship, but it was an amazing time in my life because John Barry was the ultimate guy that I wanted to take a picture of, but along with Ennio Morricone, more than any pop stars that I've ever taken, and I've been very lucky, with the Rolling Stones and what have you, to meet some amazing heroes, Brian Wilson, what have you. But those were the two guys that were head and shoulders the ones I wanted to meet the most. And I got to meet John Barry, and we touched on that in the Bond cast. But the Ennio Morricone one was quite amazing because I went along and I knew someone who worked for the Italian Institute back in the day when I just started taking photographs. I'd literally been doing it for a few weeks, and I borrowed Emma's sister's camera because I didn't have my own. I couldn't afford it, and I just decided to stay in this country and what have you because I was supposed to be going back to Australia, and I thought, no, I'm going to try and make a go of it. And I found Ennio Morricone was over here in the Italian Institute, and I went to this lecture that he was giving, even though it was translated, because obviously he didn't really speak English. He spoke broken English, but very little of it. But we ended up afterwards sitting in this room, and I was there to take his picture for the Pictorial Press, who were the people I just got a job with. And Ennio Morricone spotted me, and he was dressed, he was just so cool. He was just like out the 60s. He had a polo neck on, this amazing jacket, and he came across to me and started speaking to me in Italian. Again, just like Dario Argento, which we touched on before, thinking that I was an Italian, and talked to me for 10 minutes. And I'm standing there, in awe, shaking, thinking, what am I going to say? And I couldn't do anything but just look at him and smile, thinking, my head was just going, I've got to tell him that I'm English. I've got to tell him that I'm English. But he just kept talking to me. So I just thought, right, okay. And I was smiling and everything. And then a colleague of his came across, and I said, look, excuse me, could you possibly tell Mr. Morricone that I'm English, and unfortunately I can't speak Italian. And he told him, and he just looked at me and just gave me this look, and it wasn't even a laugh or anything. He just looked at me and just walked off, and I went, oh, bollocks, I've ruined it, But afterwards he came back across, and then he let me take all these amazing pictures of him away from everybody else, and he was just said, yeah, and his friend said, he liked the fact that you were very pleasant and about it, so yes, you can take some pictures. So I got to take his pictures then, and I treasured those, and I thought, well, if I'm probably never going to get the chance to meet him again, so that's going to be amazing. But as luck would have it, I got to know the promoter for some of the concerts, and I found out Ennio Morricone was coming over, and he was playing two things. One was a tribute concert, and I managed to get backstage at that one. I'm standing there with a guy called Jonathan Ross, who was a big presenter over here at the time, massive B-movie fan. And so we were talking with him backstage, and Ennio Morricone walked past us, and and Jonathan Ross was going, wow. And Jonathan Ross couldn't remember one of the movies that he'd soundtracked, so I told him. So he said, oh, thanks very much. And I was allowed backstage for some reason. I just stood and watched the whole gig from the side, actually on the stage, taking a few pictures. And it was great. And then about 6 months after that, the girl who I'd worked with at the Royal Festival Hall moved to the Barbican, and Ennio Morricone was coming to play a concert. And I said, look, is there any way I could possibly come and do the rehearsal? Because I think I'll get much more informal shots. And I got there, and I kid you not, this was one of the thrills of my life. I'm standing there at the front of the table, and Ennio Morricone looked around and recognized me from obviously this Italian Institute thing, and just said, and one of the people at the side came down, and she goes, Mr. Morricone said hello, and he said he's allowing you to sit on stage, right, in rehearsal. And I swear, and as I said, I've got many stories, and I've been very, very lucky. But one of the thrills of my life, and I get emotional just thinking about it now, I went and I sat in the middle of the orchestra with Ennio Morricone just in front of me while he conducted the Dollars Suite, which lasted 20 minutes long. And I sat in the middle of the orchestra on the stage in rehearsal, taking pictures of him.
Wow.
Didn't believe it. And to this day, it's one of the greatest things which has ever happened to me. So I got some nice pictures which were then used, and he liked them as well. So I sent, because I always made sure I sent my pictures, because that's the one thing you do, always make sure that you keep them happy and send. If you've got a really nice picture, they are going to like it too, probably. So I sent them a couple, and then from there, I got to take him virtually every time he came across. And one of the greatest moments that I ever had was the last time I shot him, because the last time I went across, he played the O2 Arena. And I found out from Cinema Retro that he was going to be given the BAFTA because he won it for the Hateful Eight, the Quentin Tarantino movie. Because Quentin Tarantino had wanted him to do some music for years and years and years and years, and he'd always refused. And Quentin Tarantino has always used Ennio Morricone music throughout his films. And he finally got him to do something, and on the back of it, he won the BAFTA.
Wow.
But he couldn't be there at the BAFTAs to accept it. So what I heard was that they were going to present it on the night to Ennio Morricone. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. But the night didn't stop there. I took my friend, and I knew the promoter, and the promoter said, you're going to have a nice surprise. And I was thinking, oh, I wonder what this is. And I went along on the night, and again, sitting on the stage was the biggest thrill, but this comes pretty close. There, projected onto the O2, was one of the pictures that I'd taken of Ennio Morricone, projected onto the O2.
Wow.
And I was like, and I stood there, and I have to be honest, I cried. And my mate was saying, what's wrong? And I said, that's my picture. That's my picture. I can't believe it. And I was so emotional. And then he said, I'll take a picture of it. Of course, he took a picture of it. It didn't come out because he didn't focus it properly. I'm furious with him to this day, because I didn't check it myself because I was so emotional. And then I went in, and I found out for that gig that all of the photo and TV passes were using that picture that I'd taken because he said Ennio loved the picture.
Wow.
Well, I've still got it to this day. I'm looking at it now because it hangs on the door handle of my music room. So, because it's just a thrill. I'm looking at it now, and that's the picture. And just the thrill. And when he handed it to me, and I was saying, oh, it's my bloody picture. I can't believe I was so emotional. But so I shot it. And then they let me go to watch the rest of the gig backstage. So I watched it from the side, and they handed him the BAFTA and said, yeah, you be the person who takes the pictures. So I took the pictures of Ennio Morricone getting his BAFTA.
Wow.
What an absolute thrill. And there I was, as the photographer, taking the pictures, which went all over the place. Cinema Retro did a massive spread on it. And, and I just couldn't believe it. And then I took the pictures of him getting the BAFTA. Then I went backstage. And as I'm getting emotional just thinking about this. I was standing there, and Ennio Morricone came walking towards me, and he held up his BAFTA right in front of me and winked at me.
Oh!
How cool is that?
Yeah.
It happens. I never take anything for granted. Believe me, I don't. But when it's someone who you absolutely idolize, for something like that to happen is just incredible. And and I went home, and I put on my iPod, I put on all the Fistful of Dollars soundtrack and Good, Bad, and Ugly and everything, all the way home, thinking I can't believe that just happened. And when Ennio died, there was a picture that his agent and everybody loved. And I for some reason I got this picture, and it's in Record Collector magazine. And they normally just do a little picture. They made it a full page, and it was in such a way that the light was behind him, and he looks like the Pope. And it's got this amazing halo where there's a light just behind him. And they did this, Ennio Morricone with the dates that he was born and died on. And it was a big thing. And that went into, the music press, but to have a full page picture is, is unheard of, really, but he was so important. But, imagine what that was like, I mean, it's just, it's so important because, the music is what makes me love these films so much. It's the same as the Bond films. I've said to you, the best James Bond is John Barry, and it's the music for these films that make it. But Morricone and the spaghetti westerns are just untouchable. But yeah, so sorry I went on about that, but it's worth telling, I would think.
Yeah.
No, that one's definitely worth telling.
Yeah.
Wow. And
that's amazing.
And it is true. I mean, the music is a character in these films, and the way Leone used the music was, it was brilliant. It made the movies, and, it made the scenes, and
it wasn't always music.
Yeah.
It was sometimes just sounds and weird instruments and
and if you
I mean, it's just it's just human voice, but that is the sound of a coyote. That's what you said. He said that
Oh.
was the voice of a coyote. So there you go. But
Well,
but just to be in a room with them was big enough. But to be there at those key moments, it's like, with Ray and with John Barry and Ennio Morricone, I had the chance to be with these incredible icons at key moments. And like, when Ray got his BAFTA, so not only was I photographer for when Ray got his BAFTA, I was photographer for when Ennio Morricone got his BAFTA, and I don't go out every single week and do stuff, but I've been very lucky with my timing, it has to be said.
Okay, I officially hate you now. I want your life. That is just incredible to have
it's
that
one
kind
of the thrills of my life. It really is, because these people are so important to me. And I'm sitting looking at the photo pass now, and behind me I sit in this big leather chair in my music room, and behind me I've got the soundtrack for A Fistful of Dollars and a Few Dollars More, which came out, and it's a cover I've had since I was about 12. But it's signed by Ennio Morricone and Clint Eastwood. So, I've got lovely things in my collection, but that's pretty important to me,
Oh. I hope you have, really good insurance.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, I'm afraid. It's so
Well, but bear in mind, Mary, insurance can't replace stuff like
true.
that. So
That's
just be
true.
careful.
Yeah.
Install sprinkler systems and stuff.
Yeah, well, no, that would ruin the posters.
Well,
I was
that's
about
true.
to say, Mary, that's just
true.
as bad as burning it up. So how about just don't have any accidents?
True.
There we go. I've nailed it.
I just looked it up, and there's a concert tour.
Yeah, his son's doing it. His son's doing it now.
Okay. The one in London is canceled at the O2.
Oh, it's cancelled, is it?
Yeah, I just looked it up. I don't know why.
To be honest, although every respect to his son, but I don't think I would need. I shot one of the very last concerts, but when I got really ill that time, 3 years ago, that was the day I was supposed to be shooting Ennio Morricone that day.
Oh.
And I was rushed into hospital. I remember one of the things going through my head was, I'm supposed to be at the O2 now. So that was part of the thing sort of keeping me, thinking, because I was thinking about other things as well, as you do. But, instead I was in an ambulance. So it just shows, life's full of ups and downs, so to speak, and, Ennio Morricone's been there for the rest of them. And the sad thing is because he died very shortly afterwards. But I had the chance to meet him and do these amazing things. So it's a blessing.
During the concerts, did he conduct the orchestras and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. No, he sat there. He conducted everything, and I saw him really give someone a stern look if they played something wrong. But I was sitting, as I said, Mary, he was sitting. He used to have this really tall chair, and I've got a lot of pictures of him, and a lot of which have appeared in Cinema Retro and what have you. But, just sitting there, and when I was on that stage, sitting amongst the orchestra, he was on a tall chair, it's like a bar stool right in front of me. So I could watch him, literally, he was 5 feet away from me, 4 feet away from me.
Wow.
And just watching this amazing man at work, and used to watch every part of the orchestra, and they had to be on their toes. They really did. Yeah, amazing guy.
Wow.
Well, I mean, how many films has he done? I mean, 100 plus easily, but
everything from Tarantino to soft porn movies in the 70s, but all of them have their worth. They are absolutely amazing. He obviously did amazing giallo films as well, and he did the thing. He did the thing. So it's pretty amazing what he's done. But pretty amazing. But he'll always be synonymous. Doesn't matter how many movies he did and how many great scores he did. And obviously he did Chi Mai and he did The Mission and all these amazing things. But, it's the spaghetti westerns which people associate him for. And, there is no more amazing piece of music than, Ecstasy of Gold from the scene Nick and I were talking about earlier. That is truly, truly amazing. In fact, if we're talking on it now, what I'd love to do, Nick, I sent you a clip of there's one called Vice of Killing. And if we can just insert that in here now and just listen to a bit of Ennio at his absolute peak, I think. Okay, so that was Ennio Morricone. So I think we've touched on one, but obviously we need to talk about the director, Mr. Sergio Leone.
Yes. The whistling bounty hunter.
Yeah,
Exactly.
the whistling bounty hunter from the beginning of the film, but I think he's done more than just whistle as a bounty hunter.
I think so. He's made some of the greatest movies of the 20th century, but he really has.
You know.
Really?
No, Mary, he hasn't.
I mean, it's funny. It's funny, Nick. We're talking about spaghetti westerns and everything like this, but I think Once Upon a Time in America is as good as any of these, and Once Upon a Time in the West. But Once Upon a Time in America is a true masterpiece, and we all love Goodfellas and everything. But it's one of the great gangster films I think ever made, and again, wonderful Ennio Morricone score.
Oh, definitely. And, Once Upon a Time in America. And, okay, my favorite Western.
De Niro's best film. With Raging Bull, I think Once Upon a Time in America is his best film. I really do. Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, yeah, fair enough. But Once Upon a Time in America, he's brilliant in it.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, I'm kind of lost for words because he's directed some of my favorite films, period. And that's saying a lot. And I mean, yeah, you had the spaghetti westerns, you had and looking at those, I mean, Duck You Sucker, that one's often overlooked. I think that one's brilliant with James Coburn.
He really only directed a few.
Well, he started off with Sword and Sandals, didn't he? He started off with Sword and Sandal movies, like Colossus of Rhodes, I think it was, or something like that.
Yeah.
Worked his way up, and he hit his stride very quickly. He's a bit like Kubrick in that way. He got into it, and but you can definitely see that it all starts with a fistful of dollars. And as I said, hit the ground running with this film that we're talking about today. And then by the time he got to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, he was a genre unto himself.
Yeah.
Sergio, it's Leone-esque, became it. And there's the wonderful, as I said, if you ever get the chance to read the book that he wrote or watch the extras on the DVDs by Sir Christopher Frayling, he is an absolute sweetheart, and he's as much of a Ray Harryhausen enthusiast as he is Sergio Leone. But his books on Leone are fantastic. And please do get a chance, if you ever do, to pick up one of his books. And we went to a celebration of his life, and Dario Argento was there, and because he was one of the guys on Once Upon a Time in the West. He did a lot of stuff on there, and he wrote the script for it. And Christopher Frayling was completely wonderful, and we were there, and we couldn't believe it. And Christopher Frayling has the most incredible collection of posters from Sergio Leone, from the spaghetti westerns, and there's nothing that he doesn't know. But we were all there to see all these, and it was in the ICA, I think it was, and we ended up, myself, Matt, and a couple of the guys from Cinema Retro were there, and we had the best time. And I'd just come back from holiday, and I was very brown. And again, these women came up and started talking to me in Spanish, and I said, sorry, we've been through this before, but I'm not Italian or Spanish or what have you. But we found out later on that these two women were countesses, and one of them was related to Sergio Leone, and we really should have struck up a conversation and taken them clubbing or something afterwards, because it would have been fantastic. But he can tell a story. But Christopher Frayling does the best interviews, I think. And he's one of the greatest talking heads on anything, because he's an academic, but he's a fan, and he can really, really tell a great story. And the history he has about these films and Leone is unsurpassed. And he's like a fan with you, Nick. He thinks Duck You Sucker doesn't get the credit it's worth, because it was called Fistful of Dynamite over here. It wasn't called Duck You Sucker. It was called Fistful of Dynamite, just to link in with the Dollars movies. But it's all about the Irish IRA. Strange enough, James Coburn is the IRA in that film. It's a very strange film, and Robert Steiger's amazing in it.
I don't remember ever seeing that one.
Well, it's worth checking out, Mary, if you haven't. And it's got almost as memorable a bit of soundtrack as some of the other films, too.
Wow. Okay. Such an odd name.
Well, it's about James Coburn plays an IRA. Basically, he's a bomb maker, and he knows all about explosives. And it's a really crazy movie. I mean, I love it, but
But he made so many. I mean, Mary, have you got a list of Leone's, or do we need to run through it? I'm sure the listeners know his movies anyway, to be honest. But, he's up there with Kubrick. He was, one of the great directors. But, Nick, you said he made, with me, I mean, obviously the Dollars trilogy, Once Upon a Time in America, Once Upon a Time in the West. He made some of my absolute favourite films. So he's incredibly important to film history, full stop.
Like I said, he only directed like 8 movies himself, but he was like the assistant director in a whole bunch of other ones.
Yeah, well, it's like Kubrick, and you don't need to make a lot, but the ones that you make are cinematically and historically important, and these all are.
Yeah.
And they broke every rule in the book, and they also started off genres into themselves.
Yeah, that's what's wonderful about it. He basically started the spaghetti westerns, didn't he?
Yeah, of course he did. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was like the first one, or?
Well, there's one movie I would love to see spaghetti western-wise, and my lovely friend John Richardson, who we've talked about, and we did the lovely tribute to for Black Sunday, he made a spaghetti western out there called John the Bastard. And I've always wanted to see this film, and I can never get a copy of it. But it's with Martin Beswick, and they did this, and it's supposed to be amazing. And he had never seen it. And he said, he said, I saw it when it was first released. And he said, it's one of the few films of mine that I really liked. He only ever watched She and Black Sunday and a couple of others. He didn't really watch the movies he made. But, he said that one was one of the ones he really, wanted to see again. And I asked him at the time, I said, look, John, I said, were you never approached? I said, because you are, John Richardson had blue eyes as you go on, Mary, just like Clint Eastwood. And the talk about an amazing a man. John Richardson was one of the most beautiful men who ever walked the earth, looking-wise. He's incredible. Mm-hmm. And I said, did Ennio Morricone, did Sergio Leone ever approach you to do a Western? He said, Clint Eastwood did it first and better than I could have, and he said, there's no point once you got Clint Eastwood. And I just went, well, that's typical downplaying it, John, but he did make one, and I would love to see it. So if anyone has seen that film, I'd love to hear if it's as good as I hope it's going to be, because it's supposed to be very interesting. Martine Beswick, who kindly came onto the podcast with us, she would love to see that film as well, because she's not seen it for years, and but she said it's a good one, so I'd like to see it.
Oh, for sure.
Wonder where it is. Wonder if Juan
it's out somewhere. Juan probably has it. No one.
Yeah.
I was going to say, we'll talk to Juan.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, if Juan has it, I'll make sure I bring a copy over when I come to the UK. So.
Yep.
Interesting, we're talking about it. It's just while we're going on, we might as well, because we'll have to get onto the movie soon, because we've been on for like 2 hours or something, haven't we? Now it's crazy.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood wasn't sure. We're talking about movies themselves. He really wasn't sure about this film, and he was asked to do the second one, the one that we're talking about now, for a few dollars more, and he said, I'm not sure. So basically Leone arranged, because he was back in America at the time in Burbank, and he arranged for a rough Italian cut of the movie for a fistful of dollars to be sent over. And Clint Eastwood was there with a few of his friends, and they put it on in like the living room or a screening room and watched it. And as it went on, Clint Eastwood realized that you didn't need to learn or any Italian or know any Italian to realize that this was something special. And, this was when the music was just added, because the music was already on it, obviously, because it had already been supplied first. And he said that he knew halfway through that this was something he really needed to get on board with. So the movie stopped, and he said, yeah, tell the director I'll work with him again. And history was made, and changed Hollywood forever, or Almira forever, because Almira became it was called the Italian Hollywood, wasn't it? Little Hollywood it was called. And so many movies have been made in Almira, including the one I just mentioned before, John the Bastard, with John Richardson. So many, and Death Rides a Horse, so many movies have been made there. It's quite amazing, and it's stunning. I think the Cinema Retro lot went out there a couple of years ago, and it's still all there. All the sets are there.
That would be a good trip to take.
I would love to go there. I must admit, that's one trip I'd love to do.
Yeah.
Well, if you make that trip, make sure you go over to where they shot the Sad Hill Cemetery, too, after you look up the documentary, because that's apparently still there now.
That would be cool.
It's incredible, because I read recently that on Google Earth, the finale of this film, where they're all standing around, which is one of the great scenes in any Western, where they're all looking at each other and the zoom is in the eyes and everything. And Morricone's music's playing finale is called Titoli, which is a great, great piece of music. And it goes round, sweeping round. That's the stone circle where they're all standing, the three of them. It's amazing. That can be seen via Google Earth. It's on Google Earth, that little circle. Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Wow.
That is actually really cool.
I'm going to have to Google Earth that.
It's a useless bit of trivia, but I loved it.
Well, now Mary's going on Google Earth even as we speak. So
I wrote it down to do it later.
They said Google Maps on mine, but it can't be Google Maps. I mean, it's got to be Google Earth, but there you go.
Wow.
But it's great as well, because obviously, these movies were made, and it didn't matter that they were in Italian, but the one thing that I'll touch on now, just while I'm talking about sort of actors and stuff before we get into the movie, was the fact that obviously we were talking about the dubbing, and that Clint Eastwood would go back and redub it. And when they found all the extra footage and re-put the footage back in for the DVD release, Clint Eastwood actually went back and did it.
Oh.
And, and I love the fact that, because some Hollywood stars would say, that was back when I, wasn't that famous or, what have you. But he went back and he overdubbed. And it's really interesting because his voice is so much deeper and grainier and it stands out like a sore thumb. So when the bits were cut and he's redubbed them again in later life, they really sound different, And I said this to the guys at Retro. I said, I've just seen the longer cut of, Good, the Bad and the Ugly. And I said, I don't know who they've got in. He sounds nothing like Clint Eastwood. And Lee Pfeiffer, who's the guy that runs Cinema Retro, laughed. He said, no, Mark, that is Clint Eastwood. He's just 60 years older. That's all. I went, all right, okay. So it's interesting. But yeah, on the dubbing, there's one voice dubbed 4 people in the first half an hour of the film, because the sheriff and Tucancami, which is where they first go, and then the bartender in White Rocks, which is where he's going looking for Indio, and the sheriff in White Rocks, and El Indio himself are all the same actor. so when you watch the movie, you listen, they're all sounding the same, because it's the same guy dubbing them all. He doesn't change them too much either.
Which is the best version of this movie to get if somebody wants to buy one?
The Blu-ray out, Warner's have released it. Well, it's actually MGM label, and they released it as a box set on Blu-ray. To be honest, I think they could do a far, far better job. And, this isn't pulling down Warner Brothers, but, because I love Warner Brothers and they really kind of know them and they keep sending me movies, so I'm never going to say anything bad about them. Hello, if you're listening. But they just sent me the Ghostbusters and everything, and they're sending me the new Clint Eastwood movie as well, which I still haven't seen, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. And they sent me the Dune one, which is one of my favorite movies I've seen in years. I think it's brilliant, and it deserved all the Oscars it got. Again, overshadowed, but Dune deserves its kudos. But yeah, so I think they're going to release them on a 4K version, but I was a bit disappointed in the actual quality of the Blu-rays. Because they weren't that much different to the DVD. And of course, we all know that if you put a DVD in a Blu-ray player, it upscales it by about 35-40%. So, if you do that, it's great. And your movies automatically look bigger and better. But with these Blu-rays, there was lots of scratches on them and stuff. And I wasn't that impressed. And there was too much grain. So I haven't got around buying myself a 4K. But, if I was to, I'd definitely get the Indiana Jones, the Bonds, and the Spaghetti Western trilogy.
Okay.
First, but yeah, they're the best ones to get because it's got the extras on Christopher Frayling, where he takes through all the movie posters, of which some I've got. I mean, as you know, I'm a movie poster collector, so some of my treasured ones, they double build them. So you had the Man with No Name and James Bond were double billed in the late 60s, early 70s. So I've got stuff like the double bill, which is amazing, which is Fistful of Dollars and You Only Live Twice, my favorite Bond film. And the artworks are incredible, as a double bill. But when the beloved cinema store closed, Nick, you remember that place we went to, and you as well, Mary, where we took this incredible place. Well, just before, when I found out it was shutting down, I was devastated, and I went in, and they always had this amazing one sheet of Fistful of Dollars and a few dollars more in the shop, and I bought those off them so I could remind myself of the shop. So I've got the one sheets from those, but the artwork's incredible. Railing's artwork is all on the extras for these Blu-rays, as is the making of. And then for the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, it actually shows you all the bits that they found and put back in. So they are really good. And Clint Eastwood talks with such passion about, Sergio Leone as well. It's great. It's great. Wow. Really great. So yeah, they're the ones I'd recommend. But I think they might, do them even more justice in 4K. So it's something I'd be interested in hearing. If any of the listeners have got good versions of them or 4K versions, I don't even know if they're out on that. I'd be interested to know.
Okay. I read that Clint Eastwood was amused by Leone on set because he was short and heavy, so he called him Yosemite Sam.
Is that right? That's right.
And he had like this over-the-top temper and tried to act like a cowboy, but he had a really thick Italian accent. That would be funny.
Well, Christopher Frayling said that he used to have a big hat on, a Western hat, like and he used to carry guns around with him, and he said, "Watch me, Clint! Watch me, Clint!" He literally acted out because he couldn't speak English. And he was trying not to laugh when he was doing it because this little rotund guy doing all this really cool stuff, but it's still brilliant. And and I still think to this day that Eastwood, knows what a huge impact that Leone had on his career and making him a star. And it's never, along with Don Siegel, has never forgotten that. And I think that's the character of the man right there, that he's always referencing those guys. And so he should.
That's beautiful, yeah. I was surprised he died at 60, Leone. I didn't realize he died that young.
Yeah.
It's a shame. He could have made so many more movies.
Yeah. It's just one of those things, I suppose. But sadly, but the movies that he did leave us with are incredible.
That's true.
Oh yeah, I mean they're the pinnacles of westerns.
Yes,
I truly agree with you there.
Yes,
and the thing is, when you look at the western in a lot of ways is kind of the perfect movie because you can take a western and take it to any setting. Almost and make it work.
True.
And I my big example there is High Noon, which they later remade as Outland and set it on one of the moons one of Jupiter's moons.
Yeah, that's right.
So
well, what was the one with oh Lord.
Oh, okay, wait, here comes a really odd description of something. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, the lady that was in Alien.
Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver did a movie, and she played a blue alien.
Avatar.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a Western.
Well, yeah, that was Dances with Wolves.
I can kind of see that. Yeah, I can kind of see that. But, it's amazing how they sort of crop up because you've got Greek tragedies as well, because obviously The Searchers, which is always seen as one of the great westerns ever made, that's got loads of Greek tragedy in it, where the girl's taken away by the Apaches and you go searching for her. That's one of the great movies, and that's when I knew Mauve was going to be some kind of cinephile. When we were sitting with Ray Harryhausen one day, and he said, "What are your favourite movies you've seen recently?" And she said, "Citizen Kane and The Searchers." She was about 6. So I was so proud of her, and I love the fact. But she's always liked, and I put on all 3 of the Dollars movies on for her over the years. But there's one film, and you're talking about weird films, Nick. One of my all-time favourite westerns is a much maligned, much forgotten, even though it's got the most amazing cast and soundtrack by Quincy Jones and Feliciano, which is a movie called McKenna's Gold.
Oh,
yeah, it's been years since I've seen that.
Yeah, it's got Lurch in it, there's a guy with the bit where the sun comes and points the way towards the Valley of Gold through a hole in the wall and everything, and the guys are blinded. It's still to this day, one of my all-time favourite westerns, and I put it in my top 5. I truly love it, and it's just forgotten now, and it's amazing because some of the shots look very dated now, where they're riding on horse and it looks fake, but it's the way it was shot, because it was shot in like CinemaScope. So whether we're on a bridge, the swaying, it must have been amazing when it was seen in on the CinemaScope. It must have been great. But I've loved that movie ever since I was a kid.
Oh wow! Now that's a good one. Now I need to go look up McKenna's Gold and watch it again, because I haven't watched that one in years.
I know.
But
I totally forgot about it.
Yeah, Gregory Peck. Amazing.
Yeah, well, that's why I like talking about these movies.
Any movie which has got Lurch and Catwoman in the same scene, and Catwoman naked, let no boy forget, as we don't when we were a child watching it, pretty amazing. So it's worth checking out.
All right. So, hey, do we want to do the movie now?
I think we should.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
been
because
over 2
hey,
hours
okay.
now.
Well, we've talked about the main folks, and the only other one that was in it that we might mention is Klaus Kinski. But honestly, we beat him to death in another episode. So
He's just got such
the
crazy
hunchback where he
eyes.
likes to match. Do you not want to
Yeah.
like match? But he's great in it, and the way he twitches his face and everything. Again, another. And it always amazes me that Natasha Kaninski came from Claude Kinski. When you look at him in this film, you think, "Wow, amazing."
yeah.
Where did she come from?
Well, let's just say
in what you call it, Smoking the Bandit. How you ever came from my loins? I mean, it's just amazing.
Well, and all I've got to say is he must have married really well
Yes.
because, yeah,
Yes.
Klaus Kinski, man, he's rough. But but he makes a good villain. That's
He
one thing for
does.
sure.
Or a good Nosferatu. There
Or
you
a
go.
good Nosferatu, and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So what we got here is the one of the Man with No Name films for a few dollars more. And, the film opens up and you see this guy riding way off in the distance. And the whole time he's riding, you can just hear this person whistling. And the way it's shot, it makes you think you're seeing the world from the perspective of the person whistling.
Mhm.
And you can hear him just fiddling around with stuff, and you're like, what's he doing? What's he doing? And then finally you realize he's been loading a gun. And because he shoots the guy who's riding up, and he shoots him, and he's way far away, and he falls off his horse, the horse runs off, and that is the start of the movie. And we roll into the little animated type credits for the that were very common in spaghetti westerns.
Yeah, those were
what?
not well made.
Well, I love them, Mary. They made it, but they repeated them, as was said before. And Death Rides a Horse, and those kind of titles were used a lot. But the great thing about it, I love the end where it gives the history of the bounty hunter at the end. So the price of life was this in this in these times, and I love that little intro into it because it's a perfect segue into the movie itself. And again, it's another one of those films where we don't see the hero at first.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on before we even see Clint Eastwood. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we get introduced to Colonel Mortimer first.
Yeah.
And the way we're introduced to him, it's essentially a carpetbagger, and he's sitting across from a guy who's reading the Bible. And he's got the Bible right up in front of his face, and he's reading it. And this carpetbagger keeps addressing him as father, like he's a reverend. He thinks this guy reading the Bible has to be a preacher. And so he's talking. And at one point, the conductor comes along to take tickets, and he says, "Hey, how long is it until we reach Tucumcari?" And the conductor says, "Oh, it's just a couple of minutes up here, and he goes on. And then the carpetbagger says, "Well, I hate to tell you this, Father, but the train doesn't stop in Tucumcari." And he starts outlining that you'll need to ride to Amarillo and catch this train back this way and blah, blah, blah. And this is the point when Lee Van Cleef just lowers the Bible, and we see him, and it's immediately obvious that this is not a preacher. He's dressed in very, very sharp clothes, very neatly put together, well made, and he looks like he has money, and he's smoking a pipe, and he's just this squinty character. It's awesome. And he just says, "Oh, the train will stop at Tucumcari," and stands up, and he pulls the emergency brakes handle. So the train, the conductor slams on the brakes and they stop. And by the way, kudos to Colonel Mortimer for being able to calculate exactly when to pull the emergency cord brake so that the car with his horse in it stops at the ramp, so he can just get off at the ramp and just take off.
Scene.
Oh, it's a
such
great
a great
scene.
Yeah. That horse.
Well, and the conductor is like, hey, you can't just pull that cord and stop the train. And Mortimer's just staring at him. And the guy just starts getting nervous. And he's like, of course, we'd be happy to do something like that for a customer. And he's like, well, you already did. So get out of here. And so the train takes off. And then, Mortimer goes over to the ticket seller at the train station. And there's a poster for a bandit. And the bandit's got $1,000 reward on his head. But somebody's drawn 2 extra zeros in. And the conductor or the ticket guy is like, yeah, well, this guy, he's crazy and he's a mad dog killer. And he came here and said that he's worth way more than that. And he drew those zeros himself. And, oh, man, nobody's going to take this guy on because nobody's got the guts. And again, Mortimer doesn't even have to say anything. He just stares at him. And the guy's like, well, nobody until now. And so we cut to this bar, and, he goes in, he intimidates the bartender into telling him that the guy's upstairs, and Van Cleef had taken the poster, and he hears that the guy's in a room with a girl kind of fooling around, and he slides the poster under the door, and we hear the woman go, ooh, look. And then Van Cleef steps back. He knocks on the door. Of course, the guy shoots through the door, thinking he's going to shoot whoever's outside. Mortimer breaks in just in time for this mad dog killer to jump out the window and run off. So, and I'm going to say the mad dog killer at the beginning wasn't that great because he could have just stayed there and reloaded. Yeah. But it wouldn't have been as good a movie. True. So Van Cleef, he doesn't waste any time. He just walks downstairs. Guy's finally gotten to his horse and he's riding away. And Van Cleef, as Mark mentioned, he just pulls a strap on this bundle on the side of his horse. And this roll of rifles just appears. And he just selects the perfect gun, takes aim, and shoots the guy. He shoots the horse, actually. And that was the first time that Leone really breaks the mold with the Westerns. And I think he had already sort of broken it with the fact that everybody looked dirty and hot and sweaty, which was very realistic, I think, to living in the Old West at the time. This was not a neat and clean place. This was a dirty, hot, sweaty land full of dirty, hot, sweaty people. And so, that's what we got. But so the bandit stands up and he's wounded. But Van Cleef just casually puts his gun up. And meanwhile, this guy starts walking towards him, and he's shooting his pistol at him as he's coming. And the bullets are getting closer and closer. Van Cleef doesn't care. He gets his gun out, and he's screwing on this extra handle for the pistol, and he puts the gun up to his shoulder. And just about the time you figure this bandit's got his bead on him, Van Cleef pulls the trigger, and boom, one shot to the head, and the guy's dead. And that was our introduction to Colonel Mortimer, a very successful bounty hunter. And when he goes to collect the bounty on this guy, he finds out that there's a bounty on El Indio, or on another fella.
The red guy.
The other guy. And he decides to go after this guy. But it turns out he's in another town. And as Van Cleef is on his way there, the man with no name makes his appearance. And the man with no name, Monco, so yes, he does have a name, actually. He arrives at the bar and finds this guy he's looking for. And who does he ask? He asks the sheriff, and the sheriff points to this wanted guy because it's obvious the sheriff doesn't have the balls to go after him. So, well, seriously, and more to the point, it's obvious the sheriff is on the payroll because the sheriff runs out of the... What?
And he's got the same voice as well.
Well, there's that.
Seen in White Rocks.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But the sheriff, he runs out and gets the rest of this guy's gang and brings them back. He's like, you better go to the bar. Meanwhile, the man with no name walks up to the table where this guy's playing poker, and he just starts dealing cards. And the guy's looking up at him, and he deals a hand, a 5-card draw, and they take a couple of cards, and then they each lay their hand down. And, this guy's pretty confident because I think he's got 3 kings. But Clint Eastwood lays down 3 aces. And the guy says, "I'm sorry, friend, I didn't catch the bet." He's like, "Your life." And at this point, he's gonna, he's a bounty killer and he's here to bring him in. Well, he jumps up and Clint Eastwood just proceeds to beat the hell out of this guy with one hand.
Yeah.
His right hand is always underneath the poncho that he's wearing. And, he just beats the guy up and he's roughing him up and he takes him and he's getting ready to take him out of the bar and take him to the sheriff's office to collect the bounty when he stops because these 3 other guys have walked in and Eastwood has his back to them, but he can see them in the mirror. And they're like, "Let him go." And he spins around, shoots all 3 of them dead, takes the guy, shoots the guy when he goes for a gun, then turns him in for the bounty to the sheriff, asks the sheriff, isn't a sheriff supposed to be courageous and honest? The guy's like, "Yeah." So he just takes the badge off the sheriff, walks outside, gives it to one of the guys standing outside and says, "Y'all need a new sheriff." And then he leaves town. And it's like, whoa, this is great. Yeah. And so at this point, the 2 main, I'm not going to say good guys, but the 2 main anti-heroes are introduced. Then we meet our villain, El Indio. And El Indio is in a prison somewhere in Texas or maybe just south of the border in Mexico. It's not really clear. But his gang shows up and breaks him out of prison, kills pretty much everybody, all the guards except for one. But it's funny because the first thing they do is hand El Indio his gun. And El Indio takes it, walks over to his cellmate, and says, "Adios," and shoots the guy in the chest. And you're like, why did he just kill him?
Yeah. And
then he steals this little model that the guy's been carving out of wood. And he's like, I don't know why, it really doesn't make any sense why he did this, except for the fact that the guy's a stone cold killer. But he and the gang leave. And then
that's what I like about this movie. There's so many little bits and pieces that all get tied up in the end. And a lot of movies, when they have bits and pieces like that, you lose them and you forget about them and they don't make sense. But this movie, it all comes together in the end. All those little bits and pieces. I loved it.
Yep, they all come together. Yeah. And one of the things, he gets his pocket watch back.
Yeah.
And the pocket watch plays the chimes. So El Indio's, I'm not going to say happy, but he's less psychotically rage-filled angry. And they go and he and the gang go after the guy that shot El Indio in the back and ended up putting him in prison, apparently. And this guy's there with his wife and his 18-month-old kid. And, they're holding the guy, and he says, I feel like your family is part of mine because I spent 18 months in prison, so I'm going to take my part now. And he has them take the wife and the little kid outside, and you can hear the wife kind of crying and the kid's just wailing and wailing, and then you hear a gunshot and then another gunshot, and everything's quiet. And they've just murdered this guy's 18-month-old kid and his wife. And El Indio just looks at him and says, now I think you hate me just enough. And he says, cut him loose. And they cut him loose and they stand him up and they give him his gun. And El Indio does his signature move. He opens his watch up and lets the chimes play. And he says, when the chimes end, just try and shoot me. And so it's,
perfect.
We're listening to the chimes play, and it's a great piece of music, and the tension builds. And of course, El Indio just kills this guy. and then, but we've set up this is his MO.
Yeah.
But at this point, he explains to everyone, because this is a little old burned out church, I guess, that they're holed up in. And he gets up in the preacher's roost and tells a parable. And the parable is of this carpenter that builds safes, and how this carpenter built a safe that was disguised as a cabinet. and how the biggest bank in all of Texas, the Bank of El Paso, has this safe where they keep $500,000 at least, maybe $1 million. It's a lot of money, and it's in the safe that is disguised as a cabinet, which, by the way, is brilliant, because if you go to rob the bank, even if you break in, and the Bank of El Paso is like a fort, but even if you break in and rob the bank, you're probably not going to rob the cabinet. And so most all of the money would be safe. Well, unfortunately for the bank, the guy who designed the safe saw the safe when he was visiting and became obsessed with it. And I guess he tried to rob the bank because he ended up in jail. And that's where El Indio met him. And that's why El Indio took the model, because the guy had carved an exact replica, a tiny little miniature of this cabinet, after he'd told El Indio the story. And so Indio murdered him so that there'd be nobody around that knew what he was going to do. Okay. So at this point, because El Indio broke out of prison, somebody did a really great picture of him laughing, because that ends up on the wanted poster. And Colonel Mortimer and Manco both find the posters and see that this guy's...
Sorry to interject there, Nick, but that's a great Leone moment, where because you have the picture of him laughing, and then it freezes, and then it's automatically on the poster. Again, that was something you didn't really see in movies at that time. It's been copied ever since. But you were asking about the best cuts, Mary. On the Blu-ray of that, they've actually got a longer link, and on the extras, it gives you alternative versions. And for some reason, they didn't put this in, but there's a much better edit of that where he's laughing going into the poster. Because in the movie, it's quite a jolt. But in the extra bit, the footage that they found, it's a much nicer fade or sieg into the laughing. So that's all on the extras as well. So they have extra bits that were cut out or what have you, or changed. And the bit where they're getting beaten up is all in there, and it's much, much longer, so there's more violence in it.
I need that set.
Better, but it's interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely need to check that one out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, so Manco and Colonel Mortimer both head towards El Paso, and they end up in opposite hotels across the street from each other. And Manco ends up in his hotel because this little kid, as he's coming into town, decides that he's going to make some money off Manco by being his guide.
I love that kid.
The kid's fun. And, he tells him, hey, there's a stranger, and he's staying in the hotel over there. And, it's a great little scene. But the two of them really don't interact at this point. Mortimer and Manco, they're both sort of aware of each other, but they don't interact. Well, Indio sends 4 of his men, including Klaus Kinski, the hunchback called Wild, into town to scout the bank. And while they're in there, I guess Mortimer recognized that these guys are members of Indio's gang. And so he actually walks up to the hunchback. And I mean, the guy's name is Wild, and he's played by Klaus Kinski. So this guy's going to be just bat bonkers crazy, right? And he just strikes a match on the hunchback's back and is going to light his pipe, and the hunchback blows it out. And then Colonel Mortimer takes the guy's cigarette and lights his pipe with it. And while he's doing this, Wild is just getting ready to pop. I mean, his face is twitching and he's wanting to go for his gun. But Nino, Indio's right-hand man, puts his hand over Wild's hand and stops him from drawing his gun both times. And they end up having to leave. And the reason is they don't want to draw attention to themselves because they're getting ready to rob the Bank of El Paso. So Mortimer figures out. He's like, why would this guy let me do that? Something's going down. And so Mortimer figured out that the Bank of El Paso is the safest bank. Manco has watched all this, and the two of them are watching the bank while the 4 of Indio's gang are watching it. And then after they've timed out the walk of the security guards, Mortimer looks over at Manco's hotel room. Manco looks over at Mortimer's hotel room, and one's using a spyglass and the other's using binoculars, and they both realize they're staring at each other. And so Manco, that evening, Manco sends the guy who's like the owner of the hotel, up to the room, and the guy just without saying a word starts packing up all of Mortimer's stuff. And then he takes the suitcase and he's walking out of the hotel with it. Mortimer follows him, and they stop on the porch. And Mortimer's like, "Stop, put that in my room." And Eastwood's like, "No, take that to the train station." "No, stop, put it back in my room." And the guy just freaks out, drops it, and runs off because, he's terrified to be between these two bad asses. And at this point, the kids have all gathered and they're watching, and they're like, "Watch them. They're playing the games like we play to see who's toughest." And they just go back and forth with this machismo for a few minutes, but it ends up that Manco shoots Mortimer's hat off. And then every time Mortimer bends down to pick it up, he shoots again and shoots it further down the road, until finally he gets to the point that he tries to shoot it and he misses. And that's the point that Mortimer picks up his hat, puts it on, draws his own gun, and then proceeds to shoot Clint Eastwood's hat off of his head. And then it's up in the air, and he just keeps shooting it while it's in the air. So it's obvious Mortimer is actually a better shot than Manco, or the man with no name, or Clint Eastwood, whoever you want to call him. So they end up becoming loose allies, because the scene cuts to them drinking, talking about how they both want to take out El Indio, but he's got his gang with him, and that's 14-1. And those are long odds, but if they work together, they can probably do it. And at this point, Mortimer says, "Hey, one of us needs to be inside the gang. That's got to be you, because, oh yeah, I pissed off the hunchback. And so there's no way I can be the one on the inside." So he says, "Well, how do I get in? Do I bring him flowers?" "No, bring him this guy." And he explains to him that Indio has a friend who's in jail. And if he goes and breaks his friend out and takes him, then, hey, he'll be okay. So
Sancho.
And so Manco goes and breaks Sancho out of prison. And Sancho is kind of stupid because he never even asks this guy, "Oh, he's my good friend. I vouch for him. Why is he your friend? He broke you out of prison. Why did he break you out of prison?" And when Indio asks him this, he says, "Well, I figured this guy would take me to you, Indio, and then I'd be able to get you and your whole gang and turn you over to the cops for a reward." And Indio just laughs and says, "That is the only answer that would allow you to live." And so he becomes part of the gang. Ta-da! And of course, Indio doesn't fully trust him, or at least he's playing to the rest of his gang that he doesn't fully trust him. And he sends Eastwood and 3 of the gang members off to rob the bank at Santa Cruz to draw everybody away from El Paso. Well, Clint, Manco doesn't, he doesn't want to rob the bank because he wants to catch Indio. So he kills those 3 guys while they're out. Then he goes to Santa Cruz, takes the telegraph operator and makes him send a message to El Paso that the bank's been robbed. So, of course, the sheriff of El Paso gathers all the hired guns in town, and they go riding out hell-bent for leather, leaving the bank partially unguarded. And at this point, Indio's gang busts through the wall, steals the cabinet, and rides off with it. The problem is they can't open it. And so, Manco is riding to join them, and Mortimer says, "Hey," he catches up with him and says, "Hey, listen, you need to tell him to go north." And he's like, "Okay, sure, I will." And Mortimer at this point shoots Manco in the neck, but it's just a small flesh wound. And he's like, "Hey, if you show up with the 3 guys dead and you without a scratch, Indio's going to think something's up. With this little scratch, maybe you'll be okay." And he says, "Okay, sure." And sure enough, Indio buys it. But Indio, when he suggests they go, Indio says, I want to go north. Manco says, no, let's go south, which is exactly the opposite of what Mortimer wanted him to do. And so he says, well, what we're going to do instead is we're going to go east, because that's the way no one would expect. So off they go to the east, and they get to this little town, which, by the way, was one of the town sets, I believe, from A Fistful of Dollars. But anyway, they get there, and Mortimer is waiting, because he figured that Manco would tell him the opposite, and he also figured that Indio wouldn't go north anyway, so he went east. And the hunchback, Wild, is about to shoot he's like, I want to get in a gunfight with this guy because he embarrassed me earlier. Well, of course, Mortimer just kills him. It's for all the buildup of Klaus Kinski's character. He actually does pretty much absolutely nothing in this film except twitch a lot. But anyway,
he does it well.
He does it. He's a great twitcher. I mean, he's an amazing twitcher.
I actually tried twitching my face during that scene.
Yeah. Well,
I couldn't do it.
Yeah, he had this. He was able to do this tick with his eye, and it was really good. But anyway, Mortimer kills him, and then before the gang can kill him, he says, I was going to rob the bank in El Paso, and I can open the safe without blowing all the money in it up. And so he says, I'll do that for you for $5,000. And they're like, okay. So he goes and he does. Mortimer knows how to break into the safe. He breaks into it. But at this point, Indio's being smart, and he says, look, everybody's going to be looking for us and for this money. Now, how anybody's going to recognize the money, I don't know. But, whatever the case, he and the gang and now Manco and Mortimer are all going to stay in this little town for a month. And nobody's getting any of the money. And so they all kind of settle in. Well, that night, Manco and the Colonel go down and they break into where the money's being stored and they hide it. And they reseal the chest so nobody's going to know that the money's been taken. Unfortunately for them, Indio knew the whole time that they were bounty killers. And he and his men are waiting, and they capture them, and they proceed to beat the hell out of them. And then Manco and Mortimer, you think they're done for. But then El Indio does this weird thing. He goes up to one of his gang members with another gang member's knife. And it's the gang member that's actually guarding Manco and Mortimer. And he stabs them. And he explains to Nino that he's going to have, because Nino's his best man, his henchman, his buddy. And he says, look, these two bounty killers, I've known they were bounty killers the whole time. I want them to kill the rest of the gang. Then me and you can split the money. So he and Nino raise the alarm, say that this one gang member helped them escape, kill him, and then send the rest of the gang after Manco and Mortimer. Fortunately for Manco and Mortimer, they're really good at their jobs, and they're able to recover from a bad beating quick. Because they managed to take out most of the gang except for another gang member called Groggy. And Groggy, for all of his name, is actually smart. Groggy kills Nino and forces Indio to give him the money. Only they open the chest up and find the money's gone. Well, at this point, Mortimer and Manco are coming back, and, Manco just sort of disappears. Mortimer ends up shooting Groggy as he's running off, but El Indio gets the drop on him, shoots the gun out of his hand, and sets up the iconic showdown at the very end. And now what has been revealed slowly over the course of the film is that El Indio's really nuts because he was in love with this woman that he killed her husband and raped her. And then while he was raping her, she shot herself in the side. And the only thing he has of hers to remember her by is this pocket watch that plays these chimes, the iconic chimes from Ennio Morricone's soundtrack. and inside the pocket watch is a
Now.
picture of the girl.
Yeah, if you have to put it in now, Nick, perhaps put that bit of music in now. It would be a lovely little prelude to the key bit that you're going to talk about now.
When the chimes end, pick up your gun. Try and shoot me, Colonel. Just try.
Careless of you, old man. Try this. Now we start.
just try. Because Mortimer's gun is on the ground. There is no way he is going to be able to get that gun. So the music's playing, and just when the music's about to stop, the music starts up again from somewhere else. And at this point, we realize there's Manco, and he's got a rifle, and he's holding it on El Indio, and he's like, okay, you're not going to do anything now. And he walks over to Colonel Mortimer, and Mortimer realizes that Manco has stolen Mortimer's pocket watch, and Mortimer's watch plays the exact same chimes. And that's when we realize there's a connection. And this is the real reason that Mortimer's been after this guy all along. It's revenge. And, I'm not going to give away... No, I am going to give away the end of the movie because we've already told you to go watch the movie. So now the gunfight is a fair fight. And, it is one of the iconic gunfight scenes in all of Western film history.
Yes.
And it's just brilliant. And, Colonel Mortimer guns down Indio. And then it's revealed that that the woman El Indio raped and murdered was actually Mortimer's sister.
Oh, okay, wait. I read somewhere that in the Italian version, it was he was her father.
That might make more sense, but
for years, Mary, I thought that Colonel Mortimer was her father until I watched it again. Well, I watch it every year, to be honest. But I was amazed because I thought it was a father, and since I was a kid, I thought it was a father. And then when I said, "Oh, it was a likeness between brother and sister," and I thought that said father. I wonder if you're right, and if there are two versions of that.
Yeah, the Italian version translates to father instead of...
Yeah, with different dialogue.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And I'm glad you pointed that out because for years I thought he said, I'm a father. But, I'm your father. But, but it's interesting. In this sister, and it's interesting. I was quite surprised. I thought, I always thought Colonel Mortimer, because they was making it out and calling him an old man. And obviously Indio isn't that old, although they have coloured his hair darker in the flashback. So perhaps it is in recent history. So, but it's really worth doing. And I have to say, Nick, very impressed with your Clint Eastwood impression.
Yes. Kudos.
Kudos for Eastwood, and my Eastwood anyway. And this is the thing. The film ends, and that's when, we realize it's his sister or his daughter, depending on what version you watched. And Manco's like, well, we're rich because there's a big bounty on everybody in the gang. And he's like, no, my boy, you're rich. And he says, well, what about our partnership? Our partnership is dissolved. Maybe next time. And so... he kind of rides off into the sunset. Mortimer does, while Manco's there counting his money in terms of counting his dead bodies. And Groggy actually is not dead, and he's hurt, and he's trying to sneak up behind Manco to shoot him. And Manco realizes this, spins around, shoots him, and Mortimer says, "Hey, is everything all right?" "Oh, yeah, old man. Just having a little trouble with my math." And that's the end of the film. And it's just a brilliant Western, and I love it. There you go.
He takes the money.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
No, I mean, he takes the bank money. He picks it up out of the tree, remember?
Yeah,
the
that's
$1 million.
true.
It's everything. But one of my favourite endings, Nick, is one you just said where he says, I was having trouble with my adding, but it's all right now. And he just laughs and literally rides off into the sunset. It's one of the great endings. I mean, The Searchers is pretty good where he goes out the doorway, but this is up there. And as you're right, Mary, he goes off with the tree, picks up the money as well. So he's got all the bodies and the money, and he's away. And obviously could live very comfortably for the rest of his life on this.
Yeah. I looked it up. I think that it equates to like 1.4 million in today's money.
Yeah, but it ends incredibly quickly, doesn't it? Because it comes up at the end. And I remember when my granddad first taped this for me on VHS back in the day.
Wow.
And that's how I've always loved the film. So I used to watch it, kind of wore that tape out. And at the end, where it comes zooming up and the music plays, and at the end comes from it and then hits towards the screen, the video ran out. So I just thought that was the perfect thing, because the very end shot, bang, and then the video ended, and I thought, well, it was meant to be. So that's what, I've always loved the film. And if I had 5 movies that I ever had to take onto a desert island, for a few dollars more would be one of them.
Wow.
Yeah, out of all the movies, and I've watched thousands, and I've got umpteen ones in my collection, what have you, it would be one of the 5 I take, just because it's been so important to my life. And I would probably take Dr. No above You Only Live Twice, just because it's probably more important. Although You Only Live Twice is my favourite Bond, Dr. No is probably more important because it's the one I've watched the most. So, it's interesting that you have certain movies that you would take away, like the Blues Brothers might be one, which we really should do on the podcast.
Yes.
Animal House. I can't believe we still haven't done Animal House. And Some Like It Hot, another great film. So movies like that are so important to me. But this would be definitely one of the top 5 movies that I take with me. And if I had the choice of any Western, this would be the one for me.
Wow, cool.
Oh, it's definitely one of my favorite Westerns, too. And I don't know if it'd be my Desert Island movie or not, but it would definitely be one of my, if it was just Westerns, it would definitely be one of my 5 Desert Island movies. I might, if it were one of my 5 movies, I would probably say I'd take Once Upon a Time in the West.
That's interesting. Yeah, because that's, again, a masterpiece. And again, the music and that really does make it with Jill's theme and everything in Ellendale.
Mm-hmm.
But it's everybody that Sergio Leone wanted for this film that he got, and for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly that he got in that film. So he got his Henry Fondas, and he's got his, Charles Bronsons and everything. It is the one where everything came together. And once Hollywood saw what this guy could do, people were going to bite their hands off to do it. And the shock was at the time, I remember reading that people were so shocked at how nasty Henry Fonda is in that film, because obviously he'd been the great good guy in everything throughout his career, never really played a villain, but he is so heartless and cold in that film. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing that always amazed me about Sergio Leone is the performances that he could garner from people when he didn't speak their language.
Yeah.
How did he do that? Do you know? I suppose you do know where you're in the presence of greatness. And I think everybody had to elevate their game. And there's, I think Charles Bronson's performance in that as well is absolutely superb as the man with the harmonica. And Jason Robards, and I think everyone was at the top of the tree with it. And as I said, that might be the masterpiece, but we all have favorites. And although, a lot of people would put A Fistful of Dollars above this one, perhaps, this is personally my favorite, and one I really wanted to try and do for, the podcast before the 500.
Yeah.
Because I think this was
my life.
This was the perfect film to do for the spaghetti western genre for
definitely.
our lead up to 500.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm really glad you suggested it, Mark.
Yeah, I am too. Even though it made me sad because I wanted Vince to be watching it with me. But
I thought of Vince a lot, and I was trying to think of a movie before the 500 that Vince and I talked about. There were 2, which was Kiss Me Deadly, which is one I still really, really want to do. The film noir, because he loved that film as well.
Yes.
And we all had our ideas about what the ending meant. So I'd very much like to do that, in honor of the great man. But obviously, we talked. I remember his face when I gave him that pass from one of those photo shoots I was telling you about, and he was just like, "Wow, thank you." He loved it, and I remember putting him in his pocket. So try and dig it out. It's bound to be in a drawer somewhere. But so that was great. And I always remember talking to him about the westerns, and I think he really rated this film as well.
Yeah, he did. And to me, Leone's a master. Just to me, it's because he's detail oriented.
Absolutely.
He picked everything every little piece of everything was so perfect, like guns and costumes and placement of people and just all those little details. And he even the little tiny people in this movie, or in all his movies, are really great. They're great character actors.
They're like the coffin builder in A Fistful of Dollars, where he goes, I said, make me 5 coffins, my mistake 6. the coffin maker and that, the guy with no teeth, he is just memorable, and he crops up in this as well because he's the guy with the station where it's shaking. He's the one. Oh, wait! They put the railroad through here.
Exactly.
You always have the same kind of people in it. And these people are amazing in it. And he was the coffin builder in this, and then he's the mad guy in the station in this one.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got the guy who has no legs, who pulls himself along on a tray in the first film, and comes to him and begs him, and he's got no legs. There are so many figures and characters within these films. The guy who, Nick said we ran out the window. That guy's a very strange looking fella, but you're never going to forget his face.
Yeah.
No.
Because of the zoom up to it and the use of music and everything, and it's just amazing. And the amount of detail that Leone went to, and he was famous for that, getting everything absolutely right, is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick touched on, the bullet holes in the poncho. What a great touch.
Yeah. I mean, just the small characters were so perfect, and they're all so perfect. Like the little guy, the telegraph operator.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
The wife of the innkeeper.
Yeah, the innkeeper and the bar, the guy who owns the bar in the first movie. Everybody is perfect in these roles.
Yeah.
Even if the actors are used twice, it doesn't matter. It doesn't take away from it.
Yeah. That to me was Leone's genius.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you here. And just out of interest, is this the first Leone movie you've done in the 500? You must have done some more, have you? Or
I don't think we have.
That's
don't
incredible.
think we have, actually. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we've done a bunch of spaghetti westerns, but I don't think we've done a Leone.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, there are more we can cover down the line, I'm sure. Once Upon a Time in the West, Once Upon a Time in America.
Oh yeah.
Ugly. The list is endless.
Yeah.
But thank you for doing this, guys, because this is one I really want to do, and obviously I thought of what should I do, and I think Vince would have liked this one.
Yeah, he would have.
I totally agree.
Yep. So, thank you for picking this one.
Thanks. Oh, go ahead, Mary.
I said thank you for picking this one.
Yeah.
No, I'm really glad. It must have been, I don't know. It's just perfect, and it's just in keeping with the roll up 500. I think I've guessed what you're going to have for 500 now. I was thinking about it the other day, and I think I've guessed it, but we'll talk about that another time. But yeah, I think the idea of running a poll would be good as well, and everyone can put their 2 penny worth in or memorable bits from it and what have you. That would be a nice thing to do.
Yeah. Well, and what we'll probably be doing is recording some messages. I don't think we're going to put out the 500th episode before the Monster Bash. So we may get some sound bites from folks at the Monster Bash to put in as well.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
So our 500th episode will be a whole bunch of feedback, hopefully. Hopefully, people.
Now, Mary, if we're going to have feedback, and then we're going to collect feedback.
Yes.
That's going to be a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's the 500th episode.
Well, it'll be a short episode, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I've just seen we've hit the 3 hours, so I think like Colonel Mortimer, I think we should ride into the sunset. We've got it's quite the nation is sort of on tenterhooks because it's the season, the finale ever of Peaky Blinders tonight on TV, and they're doing a feature length episode, so of a movie's worth.
Ooh.
Night. And a lot of it's been interesting because I think it's absolute masterwork. I love Peaky Blinders, and and obviously it's well documented that David Bowie was a huge fan, and when the lead actor sent him the hat, he wore the Peaky Blinders hat a lot, David Bowie, in his last years. He loved it so much.
Really?
Yeah. He was a huge fan of it. So a lot of people have been complaining that there's not a lot gone on in this series. I've loved this series because it's had like real supernatural overtones to it. It's been very different, but beautifully shot, and I think tonight is going to pull everything together rather nicely. I think it will be great, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
I've never seen any of it.
Oh, you try and watch it. Try and watch it if you can. It's
you need to check it out, Mary. You'll like it.
Yeah,
another one on the list.
They've got the new Doctor Who as well. It's the Sea Devils, the Curse of the Sea Devils, and it does look amazing because it's set in the times of Pirates of the Caribbean, and they've got galleon ships and everything with the Sea Devils attacking them as pirates. It looks very odd.
We haven't gotten that yet.
No, it's not. It's not out here till Easter. They always do it at Easter. But I think this might be her finale, or the one there might be in the autumn, the Christmas one. I'm not sure. But there's an amazing rumor now about the new Doctor Who, and I asked one of my mates at the BBC, and they haven't said it's not. It would be amazing if it happened, but I don't think it will. But they're saying that, because I don't think she's been a very good doctor at all. I think it was a great idea, but I just don't think it's worked.
Yeah.
I don't think she's been right for it.
Yeah.
But the rumor is that Hugh Grant is going to be the new Doctor Who. Now that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means that half the stars of the Lair of the White Worm will have been Doctor Who.
Doctor Who, yeah. Now, I thought that, Nick, and I'm glad you pointed that out as well. So obviously, whoever it is at the BBC in the casting is a huge fan of Lair of the White Worm.
There you go.
If you remember, my family were the ones who wrote that, because it's based on the Lambton worm, and that's where my name Mawston comes from, mouth of the worm.
What?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. In history, we've gone over that before. I think that I unfortunately I really dislike the film, but the story's amazing, The Lair of the White Worm. But it's one. Is it Michael Winner who did it? Is it Ken Russell? Sorry.
Yeah, it was Ken Russell, because we talked about it when we did Gothic a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
We really, Thingamajiggy died. William, who just died, who was in my favourite, Altered States, which was
Hurt.
William Hurt.
Yeah.
And that I watched not so long ago. Now that is got the B movie cast all over it, Altered States. What a great film that is.
I didn't understand it when I saw it, so I'd like to see it again.
It's incredible. It's so good. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
I really do love it. I mean, he's made some great films, Ken Russell, but that's mad, absolutely mad. I finally got around to watching The Devils as well. That's incredible, that film. He's made some very interesting stuff. I'm mad as a box of snakes, but great director when he wanted to be, I tell you. But it's interesting. But that Gothic was a good episode. I like that. But it's a very odd film.
Thank you. Yeah, it was.
Very odd.
All right. Well, listen, guys. I think it's time to wrap up the cast.
Yes.
So
thank you, Mark, again and again and again. We love you.
I love you too, guys.
Seriously.
And congratulations at this stage on the 500th. As I said, I think I've got an idea where it's going to be, but I'll be tuning in no matter what. Let's do this gently down the line. Let's do something like that down the line.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And now we've added the Iger sanction too. So
I'm really up for that. I'm really up for that. Okay, guys.
Hey.
One.
All right. Thanks, guys.
And have a great Monster Bash. Take care.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios, Mafia.
Well, they've gone.
For good, John?
No, just for now. It wasn't the right time for us to meet. But there'll be other nights, other stars for us to watch. They'll be back.
The ghosts are moving tonight, restless, hungry.
All right, fellas, here's your story. Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
Wait, Captain. I have found evidence of intelligent beings on this planet.
Look to the skies. It's the B-Movie Cookbook. Menus inspired by 15 of your favorite B-movies from the 1950s, with teenage werewolves, blobs, and enough cheese for everyone.
When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
But until then, we've got Ed Wood and Vincent Price.
There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
So impress your friends with dinner and a movie with the B-Movie Cookbook. We've got you covered. Get your copy today at bmoviecookbook.com. That's bmoviecookbook.com.
Let me see that book. I am interested to see what sways your mind so heavily.
Sure thing. Just visit bmoviecookbook.com.
Anybody around here want some coffee?
Transmission.
Big
wins. Even in the 80s.